Chapter 253. In the room, Chi-Man propped up her chin with one hand, looking at the chess pieces on the chessboard in front of her. The black and white chess pieces crisscrossed on the board seemed disorderly, but Chi-Man was watching with keen interest. After so many years in the Great Jin Dynasty, she had learned many of the habits of the people of the Jin Dynasty. For example, playing chess was a way to cultivate one's character. This was undoubtedly a very good method. Even after so many years in the office of the minister, she had not made a single mistake. But today, it was somewhat different. Suddenly, a person walked in from outside the door. That person walked in with large strides like the wind, not even knocking on the door. His movements were incomparably rough, looking somewhat reckless in a fit of pique. Chi-Man raised her eyes. The man who walked in from outside was wearing a gray robe that dragged to his feet. There was no mask on his face that he usually wore. Half of his face was uneven, and that pair of strange green eyes made him look especially ugly. That was Yuan Chuan. Chi-Man looked at him calmly, not at all surprised. She even smiled slightly and said, "So this is what you look like. No wonder you wear a mask." Her tone was calm, but it always seemed to carry a kind of sharp mockery, making people who heard it feel uncomfortable. But Yuan Chuan obviously did not notice this. He only walked forward step by step, his voice cold as he said, "The holy maiden is dead." Oh. Chi-Man reached out and picked up a chess piece, thinking for a moment before placing it down. She only said, "I already said that she was reckless and spoiled." She did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Sooner or later, she would cause trouble and lose her life. She was killed by Xianli. Yuan Chuan took a step forward and continued, "You already knew that Xianli would kill her." "No, you did it on purpose, didn't you?" "I did it on purpose." Chi-Man seemed to have heard something funny. She said indifferently, "Why would I kill her on purpose? You are the princess of the previous dynasty. At that time, the southern frontier was destroyed because of you. With the Holy Maiden, your status was greatly reduced. You were no longer the princess who could call the wind and summon the rain. Saintess has always been at odds with you. If you want to completely control the southern border, Saintess is your stumbling block, you want to get rid of her." Yuan Chuan said, "You saw that edict a long time ago. You knew that there was something wrong with it, but you didn't tell the Holy Maiden. You even deliberately allowed her to burn the edict. Because you knew that once this matter was exposed, the Holy Maiden would definitely be killed by the enraged Xianli. All of this was your plot." After Yuan Chuan finished speaking in one breath, he glared at Chi-Man. His jade-green fox eyes were filled with hatred. It was obvious that he wanted nothing more than for the woman in front of him to die. He carefully thought about the key points and found that Chi-Man was the most suspicious. Dan Zhen and Chi-Man were together, how could Chi-Man not know what Dan Zhen was doing? Since she knew, why didn't she warn Dan Zhen, and in the end, Dan Zhen died in Xianli's hands. Hearing this, Chi-Man laughed softly. Her gaze moved from the chessboard to Yuan Chuan's face. She carefully looked at Yuan Chuan as if she didn't know him. Then, she said unhurriedly, "After so many years, I still don't understand. With Dan Zhen's temperament, how could she do so many things, and even negotiate with Xianli? It turns out that there was a smart person hiding by her side. What you said is right, this matter does have my contribution. However, you are wrong about one thing. I didn't deliberately do this, I just pushed the boat with the current. I never opened the edict, and I didn't know the contents of the edict." Yuan Chuan didn't speak, the anger on his face didn't fade. "When Dan Zhen burned the edict, I received the news too late. The edict has already been burned, what's the point of investigating? That day, I also didn't know so much. Later, when the real edict came out, I knew that Xianli would definitely come to ask for another edict. But that edict was destroyed in Dan Zhen's hands, Xianli would definitely vent his anger. Dan Zhen was too savage. You were so obedient to her that she didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. She thought that this was the southern border where everyone respected her. She didn't know that in the eyes of the people of the great Jin dynasty, she was just an ant. This kind of temperament will one day bring disaster to the southern border. It was better to borrow Xian Li's hand to let her suffer a bit, and know how powerful she is. Qi Man sighed, it's just that I didn't expect that the edict was Xian Li's edict of succession. Dan Zhen burned Xian Li's edict of succession. If it were any other prince, they would not let that person go. I am not surprised that Dan Zhen died in Xian Li's hands. Because this was the price she had to pay. Yuan Chuan looked at her, his words full of anger, so, you are not wrong at all. That's not it, Qi Man smiled slightly, but in the end, I was just pushing the boat along with the current. The plan behind this also didn't come from my hands. Since you are her loyal servant, you should be clear about who is behind this. It's Jiang Ruan. Yuan Chuan gritted his teeth. That's right, Qi Man nodded, I somewhat admire her. From the beginning when she fell into our hands, she put on such a show in order to achieve all that she has now. Now, you see, without expending a single soldier, the southern border lost a holy maiden. Tell me, this debt, should I be held accountable? Shouldn't you be protecting her? Yuan Chuan was somewhat puzzled at first, but then his face became vigilant. Why do you still want her life? Since Qi Man and Xian Li were allies, and Xian Li wanted to use Jiang Ruan to make a deal with Xiao Xiao, before this, Jiang Ruan's safety must be guaranteed. But just now, listening to the meaning of Qi Man's words, it seemed that she did not care about Jiang Ruan's life or death. Was she not worried that if something happened, it would be difficult to explain in front of Xian Li? Xian Li and I have never been allies, Qi Man said indifferently. Moreover, Jiang Ruan and I have some personal grudges. Since you are not afraid of death, you can also help me resolve this grudge. Why should I stop you because of this? But I would like to ask you, are you afraid of death? The meaning of these words was almost obvious. If Jiang Ruan died, Xian Li would definitely take Yuan Chuan's life, because Yuan Chuan had ruined his good deed. Although Qi Man and Jiang Ruan had grudges, it was not worthwhile for her to give up her own life for Jiang Ruan. This was a gamble. On one end was Jiang Ruan, and on the other end was her own life. Qi Man thought that Jiang Ruan's bargaining chip was not enough, but Yuan Chuan felt that it was enough. Yuan Chuan said, I only want to avenge the holy maiden. In that case, Qi Man smiled, then go and do what you want to do, I will not stop you. Yuan Chuan looked at Qi Man and sneered, thank you very much, princess. Then he turned and left. He also hated Qi Man, but not as much as Jiang Ruan. At most, Qi Man had pushed the boat along with the current, but Jiang Ruan was the mastermind of the whole thing. Moreover, when Dan Zhen was still alive, she wanted to kill Jiang Ruan. Now that Dan Zhen was not here, killing Jiang Ruan would also help her fulfill a wish. Qi Man looked at Yuan Chuan's receding figure, and the smile on her face gradually faded. What she had said just now was partly true and partly false. Jiang Ruan was indeed the mastermind of the whole thing, but she had not just pushed the boat along with the current. She had long guessed that the imperial edict was not that simple, not because of anything else, but because of a kind of intuition. In any case, she had interacted with Jiang Ruan for a long time in the minister's fu. Jiang Ruan was a person who, the more she hid something, the more impeccable her appearance was. But being kidnapped was an abnormal thing. Qi Man guessed that Jiang Ruan must have some plan, and perhaps there was something strange about the imperial edict. She did not say anything, because she also wanted Dan Zhen's life. Only if Dan Zhen died, in the future royal family of Nanjiang country, she would be the only legitimate princess, and only she could be a noble and inviolable member of the royal family. As for Jiang Ruan, Qi Man slowly raised the corner of her mouth. Why did she want her to die? Probably because if Jiang Ruan died, that woman's son would also feel heart-wrenching pain. She knew that Xiao Xiao loved his Wang Fei very much. She wanted to take revenge on Crown Prince Hongxi and Xiang Xiaoyuan for losing her love, and let their son also have a taste of this. Qi Man did not notice that the mute servant girl who was bending over to sweep the floor in the room froze for a moment. Then, she restored her usual slightly stupid and cowardly expression and left the room with the dirty water. Jiang Wan sat on the couch and hid the abortion-stabilizing pills in her sleeve. These days, the mute servant girl had sent a lot of these abortion-stabilizing pills. Because they were not eye-catching, it was convenient to hide them. She also gradually began to confirm that the mute servant girl indeed did not have any bad intentions towards her. These days, she had been helping her cover up so that others would not know. Jiang Ruan's body had already been pregnant for several months, and it gradually began to show that she was pregnant. Even under such an obvious action, she had not been discovered. It was enough to see that the mute servant girl and her cooperated seamlessly. The mute servant girl also consciously added some nourishing things to Jiang Ruan's food, but she did it more discreetly. She had just straightened her sleeves when she saw the mute servant girl come in with a basin of water. She immediately closed the door and made a gesture to wipe her face. Jiang Ruan leaned on the innermost couch. Even if one looked out of the window, the mute servant girl was very close to Jiang Ruan, but no one could see the mute servant girl's open mouth. Every time the mute servant girl had something to say to Jiang Ruan, she used this method. Yuan Chuan wants to kill you. The mute servant girl leaned close to Jiang Ruan's ear, and her voice was very clear. Qi Man also tacitly agreed. Jiang Ruan was slightly startled, and then immediately said, as expected. It seemed that Yuan Chuan's feelings for the holy maiden of the southern Xinjiang were unusual. Once he found out that she was the mastermind behind the scenes, he would certainly not let the matter rest. However, Qi Man also tacitly agreed, which made Jiang Ruan somewhat surprised. She had thought that the alliance between Xianli and Qi Man was already very solid, but now it seemed that this was not entirely the case. Perhaps in another way, Qi Man wanted to flatten the entire Great Jin dynasty. Her main purpose was to avenge the enmity of that year, and at that time, the person she hated the most was nothing more than Xiang Xiaoyuan. Xiao Xiao was Xiang Xiaoyuan's son, and she was willing to do anything that could cause trouble for Xiao Xiao. Jiang Ruan muttered to herself. Qi Man's formidable methods of enduring silently made people always overlook her identity. They felt that she was a vicious and merciless person of the southern Xinjiang, and that she had an extremely strong view of the overall situation. However, they had forgotten that she was still a woman. When women faced matters of the heart, they would always lose some of their rationality. You are in danger now, how can I help you? The mute servant girl asked. Don't worry, the worst thing is to tell those imperial bodyguards outside that Yuan Chuan wants to kill me. Those imperial bodyguards are all Xian Li's people, and they have received orders to protect my safety. If they know that Yuan Chuan has the intention to harm me, they will certainly protect me with all their might. Xian Li would also want to use Jiang Ruan to make a deal with Xiao Xiao. Naturally, such a valuable bargaining chip would not be destroyed by Yuan Chuan. Therefore, these people were all sent by Xian Li to protect her safety. If Yuan Chuan really made any movements, he could naturally borrow the strength of these imperial bodyguards. The worst method? The mute servant girl seemed to somewhat understand Jiang Ruan's meaning, but after thinking about it carefully, she still did not quite understand. She asked, then, do you intend to use this worst method? Jiang Ruan smiled slightly, naturally not. Although this method can protect me for a while, it cannot guarantee my safety forever. Moreover, my body is becoming more and more obvious. If I continue to stay here, sooner or later, I will be discovered by them. Based on Xian Li's temperament, this will undoubtedly increase the bargaining chip. Moreover, I am afraid that he will do something detrimental to the child. In this matter, I cannot gamble. Then what do you mean? The mute servant girl was somewhat puzzled. The objectives of those imperial bodyguards and Yuan Chuan are diametrically opposed. I want to take advantage of their conflict and find a suitable opportunity to escape in the chaos. Xianli will soon make his move. Once he starts, he will use me as a bargaining chip. Then, if Yuan Chuan wants to kill me again, it will be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Therefore, he will certainly make his move within these 2 days. At that time, you will do this. She leaned over and whispered a few words in the mute servant girl's ear. After the mute servant finished listening, she looked at Jiang Ruan with some shock. This is too risky. What if you fail? You have to think about it. Right now, you have a child in your stomach. It is precisely because I have a child in my stomach. Jiang Ruan frowned as she looked at her, her tone also becoming serious. Yuan Chuan is incomparably cunning. There will come a day when this stomach of mine will not be able to be concealed. Yuan Chuan hates me to the bone, and originally had the intention of perishing together with me. Once he knows that I am pregnant, he will only think of more vicious moves. I am not afraid of facing him alone, but I want to protect my child. The plan I told you just now, although it is also dangerous, it is much safer than staying under Yuan Chuan's nose. This matter, if it succeeds, it is my fortune, if it fails, it is my fate. I cannot let Yuan Chuan know that I am pregnant, do you understand? The mute servant girl looked at Jiang Ruan. These days, she had seen this woman calmly devise strategies. Without expending a single soldier, she made the people of Nanjiang kill each other, and caused the aloof holy maiden to die in Xian Li's hands. She was indeed a powerful woman, but at this moment, when the flesh and blood in her stomach was mentioned, the worry on her face could not be concealed. But when she spoke of the plan, everyone could feel the determination in her heart. A woman would become weak because she had become a mother, but also strong because she had become a mother. The mute servant girl said, I understand, I will help you. But please remember our agreement. After this matter is completed, you must kill Xianli. Jiang Ruan nodded. Just as she finished speaking, someone came in from outside the door. It was not anyone else, but Yuan Chuan. The mute servant girl's back was facing Yuan Chuan, and she looked up at Jiang Ruan with some uneasiness. Jiang Ruan lowered her eyes, indicating that she could rest assured and quickly leave. Yuan Chuan would not make a move now. Outside were all Xian Li's people. Even if he wanted to make a move, he would definitely lure Xian Li's people away. The mute servant girl quickly packed up the handkerchief and fragrant pancreas, and carried the basin of water out. Yuan Chuan slowly walked forward and stopped in front of Jiang Ruan. With a fake smile, he said, Wang Fei, long time no see. You look a little more plump. You are really in a good mood. Jiang Ruan looked up at the man in front of her. He had already taken off his mask. This mask used to be very important to him because he always wore it on his face. Now that he had even taken it off, did it really not matter? Or did he have nothing to live for? Jiang Ruan retracted her gaze and smiled slightly. I am merely cultivating my character. After becoming pregnant, it was inevitable that her body would become more plump. Her lower abdomen could be covered with large clothes, but her face could not be covered. Fortunately, Jiang Ruan's body had always been on the thin side. Now that she was only a few months pregnant, it was not particularly obvious. She only looked a little more plump, but not overly so. Yuan Chuan sneered again, his tone full of resentment. Wang Fei, why are you happy? Is it because your own trick succeeded and caused the death of the holy maiden? Did I kill the holy maiden? Jiang Ruan tilted her head slightly, as if thinking carefully. Let me think. At most, I only concealed the news of the imperial edict and gave you the wrong information. I did not think that I would want your holy maiden's life. Your holy maiden is dead. Did I cause her death? What a glib tongue. Yuan Chuan seemed to have heard a joke. His posture was somewhat stiff, and his wrinkled face looked exceptionally strange because of the anger on his face. His red lips were still curled upwards, and at first glance, he looked like a demon that had come to claim her life. Do you think that this can cover up the fact that you killed someone? This was all part of your plan. Do you think that after killing the holy maiden, you can still escape unscathed? Do you think that your husband will come to save you? He won't, you won't be able to wait for that day. Jiang Wan chuckled, Lord Envoy, you don't have to threaten me. In this life, the thing that I lack the most is being threatened. Compared to being threatened, I am more looking forward to you taking some practical action. Of course, this is not what I want to say. In fact, I am a little curious. Although I schemed against your holy maiden, in the end, this matter is not without leeway. Wasn't it Xianli who killed her with his own hands? Why is it that the enemy you found is me, and not him? Why do you want me to pay with my life, and not Xianli's? Is it because you know that you cannot contend against Xianli? You keep saying that you are incomparably loyal to your holy maiden, but even when you want to avenge her, you are so picky. Once you meet an enemy that is beyond your own ability, you just ignore him. Do you think that you are not putting on an act by doing this? Your loyalty is just an act for others to see, because you don't even have the courage to avenge her. Yuan Chuan was stunned for a moment. Although he had told himself from the beginning that not a single word that Jiang Ruan said was true. But when she said it, he could not help but agree with her from the bottom of his heart. He had no way to kill Xianli, and Xianli was surrounded by bodyguards who were highly skilled in martial arts. Qi Man would also not allow it. Therefore, even though he knew that Xianli had personally killed Dan Zhen, he could not do anything about it. Jiang Ruan's words were like a dull hammer, hitting the truth that he had not dared to face all along. He was a weak coward, and he did not even have the courage to avenge Dan Zhen. Yuan Chuan only felt that his heart and veins were being torn apart, and a great sense of loathing for himself assaulted his heart. He even thought that it would be better to just follow Dan Zhen like this. But after a moment, he recovered from such an emotion. His gaze fell on Jiang Ruan, who was all smiles in front of him, and he could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. This woman was too scary. She actually wanted him to have the thought of loathing for himself. She was guiding his thoughts. She was an expert at playing with people's hearts. She was too scary. For a moment, Yuan Chuan's mind was only filled with bewilderment towards this woman. He composed himself and said, Do you think that by saying this, I can transfer all my hatred to Xianli? Do you think that I will loathe myself? You're just talking nonsense. From the beginning to the end, this matter is all your fault. Even Xianli's killer was because he fell into your trap. Everything was calculated by you, and you are the real murderer. If there is a life to pay, the first one will be you. Jiang Wan shrugged her shoulders, what a pity. She did not say what it was that it was a pity, but Yuan Chuan knew very well in his heart. She felt that it was a pity that her words just now had been seen through by Yuan Chuan. Yuan Chuan was incomparably furious, but he could not make a move at this time. Outside were all Xianli's people, and if he did so, he would beat the grass and alert the enemy. He looked Jiang Ruan up and down again, and his gaze stopped for a moment on Jiang Ruan's slightly plump face. He gloomily threw down a sentence, I hope that you will always be this lucky. Then, he turned around and left. After Yuan Chuan left, Jiang Ruan frowned. Her hands stroked her lower abdomen, and she tightly pursed her lips. Her face, which always had a smile on it, unexpectedly became somewhat solemn. There was no more time. That night, in a corner of the temple, a fire suddenly burst into the sky, and a woman's voice suddenly called out, Yuan Chuan, what do you want to do? Guards. That voice was not unfamiliar, it was the voice of Jining Wangfei, Jiang Ruan. The fire rose from the ground, and the temple, which was originally made of wood, almost immediately engulfed half of the wall. The strangest thing was that the imperial bodyguards guarding Jiang Ruan's door did not move at all, as if they were dead. This was only because of the few people left at the door. When they heard the sound, they were stunned by the raging fire. In the dark of the night, a man dressed in gray ran over, and looked at the burning fire in front of him in bewilderment. This person was Yuan Chuan. He had indeed planned to make a move today, but who knew that just as he was thinking of a way to get rid of the imperial bodyguards at the door, there would be a fire here. Yuan Chuan almost did not hesitate to think that this was definitely a plot by Jiang Yuan. Just now, there was a woman shouting loudly, so naturally, it was Jiang Yuan. Being in this room, Jiang Yuan naturally had no chance of survival. Yuan Chuan looked at the fire in front of him. He did not know where the fire had started, but it almost engulfed the whole room. The room that Jiang Yuan was in was originally very remote. If he had not planned to make a move in the middle of the night, he was afraid that even if this place was burnt to ashes, no one would know. The woman's screams were still coming from inside, and Yuan Chuan could hear them clearly. It was impossible for Jiang Yuan to escape. However, Yuan Chuan's heart gave birth to a strange conjecture. After fighting for so long, he had never gained any advantage from Jiang Yuan. Could it be that this was another of Jiang Yuan's schemes? How could Jiang Yuan be willing to die in this fire? Yes. Every time it seemed that there was no way out, she was able to come back from the dead end. Even this fire, which seemed to have no way out, might not be a deliberate scheme of hers. Once he had this idea in his heart, Yuan Chuan's suspicions grew stronger and stronger. So what if this fire was burning? He must see Jiang Yuan die in there with his own eyes. If she was alive, he wanted to see her, and if she was dead, he wanted to see her corpse. Without confirming Jiang Yuan's death, he could not be at ease. Once Yuan Chuan thought of this, he hardened his heart. Even if it was a raging fire, he did not have any misgivings as he rushed in. The subordinates who were still busy putting out the fire outside were shocked and they saw this scene, and one after another, they tried to dissuade him. But how could Yuan Chuan listen to them? Now, he wholeheartedly wanted Jiang Yuan's life, and he was already prepared to die. Why would he care about the fire or where it was? As long as Jiang Yuan died, he was willing to pay with his life. Without hesitation, Yuan Chuan plunged into the sea of fire. As soon as he entered, he felt a burning sensation hit him in the face, and the heat went straight to his face. The flames spread everywhere, and with every step he took, he could feel his hair and skin getting more scorched. The smell of burnt flesh drilled into his ears, but Yuan Chuan did not care and continued to walk in. Once this room was on fire, it was impossible to tell where it was, and where it was. He could only hear Jiang Yuan sobbing in the depths of the room, and he followed the sound and walked in. Yuan Chuan was not the least bit afraid that he would also be buried in the sea of fire. As long as he could see Jiang Yuan die, what harm was there in perishing together with her? He only wondered why Jiang Yuan was in such a deep part of the room. Could it be that at that time, she had not thought of escaping? Yuan Chuan's heart quivered, and his footsteps quickened. The deeper he went, the bigger the fire became. Yuan Chuan's hands were burned to the point of burning blisters, but he completely ignored them. Finally, in a corner, he saw Jiang Yuan curled up against the wall. Jiang Yuan was still sobbing, and Yuan Chuan breathed a sigh of relief. With a sinister expression, he smiled and said, "Jiang Yuan, now go to hell and pay with your life for the Saint Maiden." After he finished speaking, Jiang Yuan was still sobbing as if she had not noticed. Yuan Chuan was startled, and a strange feeling suddenly arose in his heart. How could Jiang Yuan keep crying? This woman's tears were rarer than stones. This wasn't right. He suddenly stepped forward, and ignoring the burning beam in front of him, he grabbed Jiang Yuan's hand and dragged her whole body in front of him. Jiang Yuan was wearing the clothes she usually wore, and was sobbing. Her face was blackened by the fire, but one could still make out her facial features. That was not Jiang Yuan, but the mute servant. "I've been tricked," Yuan Chuan shouted. He did not care why the mute servant could speak, or why she wanted to help Jiang Yuan. At this moment, he only felt vexed. It turned out that all of this had been a trap set by Jiang Yuan. With the help of his hand, the imperial bodyguards outside fell to the ground. Then, she set the room on fire. The mute servant girl was wailing inside. Everyone knew that the mute servant girl was mute and could not speak, so they were certain that the person inside was Jiang Ruan. If he had not suspected and walked in to take a look, the mute servant would have sacrificed herself, and everyone would have thought that the remains were Jiang Ruan's to help Jiang Ruan escape. If he had suspected and walked in to take a look. The mute servant suddenly jumped up and grabbed his arm tightly. The smile on her face was incomparably strange. I did not expect that you would actually come in. Just as well, I have profited. Since you want her to accompany you to hell, why don't you accompany me to hell? This was her goal. As long as Yuan Chuan came in, she would drag Yuan Chuan along with her to perish together. This way, the people outside would not know the situation inside, and they would not know that Jiang Ruan was a fake. The real Jiang Ruan had already escaped. What a vicious idea. Yuan Chuan sneered, you are Xiao Xiao's man. Wrong, the mute servant also laughed, Xianli and I have an irreconcilable enmity. Since you are his ally and also a barbarian dog of the southern frontier, I must take revenge. When she finished speaking, her arms tightened. A large piece of burning wood fell, and sparks splashed all over Yuan Chuan's body. At this time, the fire was already very strong everywhere, and the house was about to collapse. Yuan Chuan seemed to be in a precarious situation, but his expression became more and more sinister. He originally wanted Jiang Ruan's life, but now that Jiang Ruan had a chance to escape, how could he be willing? Even if he died, he would not be willing. Yuan Chuan sneered and felt his hands and feet tighten. He discovered that the mute servant had actually used some kind of buckle to tie her arm to his. The mute servant had stayed here for a long time and inhaled a lot of smoke. At this moment, she was already on the verge of death, and this action had already exhausted all her strength. Yuan Chuan smiled cruelly, since this is the case, I will send you on your way. He decisively pulled out a sawtooth curved knife from his waist, and chopped off the mute servant's arm in one move. He didn't know what was smeared on the edge of the knife, but there were actually many tiny insect egg-like things that quickly crawled out, and crawled into the mute servant's severed arm. These poisonous insects are also very precious, you've lucked out. Enjoy it. Yuan Chuan's injuries were also not light. His footsteps were weak, and his whole body was dripping with blood and pus from the burn. He immediately walked out. The mute servant screamed and held her severed arm. What was even more painful than the severed arm was that countless poisonous insects began to enter her body. That feeling was like 10,000 ants nibbling at her heart, it was really unbearable. In the sea of fire, the mute servant's screams resounded. She thought, in fact, Jiang Ruan did not ask her to do this. She only asked her to hold on for a little more time. She had done this willingly. She wanted to buy more time for Jiang Ruan. Helping Jiang Ruan was helping herself. Even if she felt great pain at this moment, she did not regret it, as long as she could take revenge. When Yuan Chuan appeared from the sea of fire drenched in blood, the people outside jumped in fright. His clothes had been burnt into charcoal, and there was not a single piece of undamaged skin on his body. Dark yellow liquid flowed everywhere, emitting a pungent smell of burnt flesh that made one want to vomit. A large portion of his already ugly face had been burned off. The pink skin was exposed to the air, and it was extremely horrifying. Even the subordinates who were usually with him could not help but take a step back. Qi Man stood among the crowd and looked at Yuan Chuan indifferently. How is it? Yuan Chuan sneered. The bodyguards outside the room had not yet woken up. He had made a lot of preparations, but he did not expect that he would be the one to be tricked. If these people had not fainted from the poison, it would not have been difficult to catch the fleeing Jiang Ruan. He walked out with an incomparably gloomy expression. She ran away. Now, chase. In the wilderness of the mountain stream, there was not a single trace of light on the pitch-black mountain road. Jiang Ruan rode her horse as fast as she could. She could not light a torch, or else it would attract Yuan Chuan's people. She did not know the current situation of the mute maid. Originally, she had allowed the mute maid to go with her, but the mute maid had said that she wanted to stay behind to take revenge. Now that she could not be persuaded, she could only let her be. She did not know how long the mute maid could hide from Yuan Chuan. Yuan Chuan was an intelligent person, and should catch up very soon. Jiang Ruan was very anxious. She did not expect that this place would be so far from the capital, and that it was so desolate. There was no sign of human habitation within a radius of a few li, and there was simply no place to hide. She did not know whether the child in her belly could withstand such a violent jolt. She had taken a lot of the abortion-calming pills that the mute maid had given her in one go, and only hoped that it could safely pass through today. However, this was, after all, an unfamiliar place, and Jiang Wan herself did not know where she was going. Just as she was thinking of continuing to run forward, she heard a noise behind her. She turned her head to look and saw that a large fire was approaching. The person in the lead was riding on a horse. If it was not Yuan Chuan, who could it be? He had caught up. Her heart tightened. Yuan Chuan had actually caught up so quickly. Perhaps it was because they did not have any misgivings about lighting a torch. Jiang Wan no longer cared about her own body. She took out a dagger from her sleeve, and without thinking, she stabbed it into the buttocks of the horse beneath her. The horse felt the pain and spread its hooves to gallop wildly. In this way, she had temporarily widened the distance between her and Yuan Chuan's people. This horse was the best one that Jiang Wan had chosen in the stable, and it ran quite fast. However, under such a violent jolt, Jiang Ruan's lower abdomen began to ache faintly. She secretly cursed in her heart, and immediately reached out to cover her lower abdomen, attempting to calm the child in her belly. However, that pain only intensified. The faster the horse ran, the more pain she felt. Yuan Chuan followed closely behind. Naturally, he also noticed that Jiang Ruan's posture was strange. He watched for a while, and a thought suddenly floated into his mind. He could not help but recall why Jiang Ruan had raised a white dog during that period of time. That dog ate a lot, yet it was very thin. He then recalled Jiang Ruan's increasingly plump face, and his heart was almost certain. He shouted excitedly, "Catch her, she's pregnant. She can't run fast." Jiang Ruan's heart skipped a beat. She thought to herself, "Oh no, I've actually been discovered by Yuan Chuan." Yuan Chuan hated her so deeply that if he caught her, the first thing he would do would be to kill her child. She steeled her heart and ran even faster. But Jiang Wan had neglected the fact that it was already difficult to walk in the darkness of the wilderness. This kind of mindless charge was extremely dangerous. She had wholeheartedly wanted to escape from Yuan Chuan, but she did not expect that Yuan Chuan had deliberately forced her into a dead end. The broken wall was right in front of her, towering into the clouds. During the day, she could still enjoy the beautiful scenery, but at night, it was a stretch of darkness, concealing the depth of 1,000 zhang below. Jiang Wan could not see clearly at all, and did not even know when she had approached it. She only felt her body suddenly become light, and the horse beneath her let out a long neigh. Then, together with her, they fell into the endless abyss. She vaguely heard Yuan Chuan's malevolent laughter and the sound of him reining in the horse. "I said earlier that I would send you on your way." Chapter 254. The wind at the foot of the mountain was very strong, and it was chilly in the morning. In the wasteland overgrown with weeds, there was a huge pit. The pit was covered with straw, and there seemed to be some tempting fragrance. Two young men dressed as hunters carried medicine baskets on their backs. From afar, they could see a big hole in the pit, and it seemed that there was a big movement. The young man, who looked a little childish, said, "Brother, look, is there a big guy? Mother is so lucky these days." The older young man could not help but show a trace of joy on his face. He said, "Let's go and have a look." This pit was originally set up to catch big guys, but usually, there were mostly wild animals such as wolves and rabbits in this place. There were no big beasts, so this pit was just for show. Who knew that they would be so lucky today? Unexpectedly, there was a big guy. The two of them were naturally overjoyed. They touched the sickles and bows on their backs, and crouched down towards the pit. The younger one could not be as patient as his brother. After a few steps, he trotted all the way to the pit. He could not wait to look into the pit. His brother was so scared that he quickly shouted, "Xiao Shan, stop. Be careful, there is something down there that will hurt you." Xiao Shan did not move for a long time. He just kept drilling his head into the pit, as if he wanted to see clearly what was in it. Seeing this, his brother became even more anxious. He thought that his brother's behavior was a little strange. He also remembered that some hunters in the mountains said that some wild animals would pretend to be injured to attract people. When the people approached, they would grab the neck of the people and drag them into the pit. Could it be that Xiao Shan's neck had been grabbed by the beast in the pit? The more the young man thought about it, the more suspicious he became. He immediately picked up his sickle and ran towards the pit. Who knew that halfway, Xiao Shan raised his head and looked back at his brother. He said in a disappointed tone, "Brother, it's not a big guy. It's a woman inside." The young man's movement stopped abruptly. He was also stunned for a moment. He quickly walked forward and looked inside. Indeed, with the sunlight outside, he could see that there was a thick layer of straw scattered outside the pit. There was a person lying on the straw, and it looked like it was a woman. The two brothers looked at each other. In the end, it was the older brother who said, "Bring the person up first." The small mountain slid down. The two brothers, one outside the pit and one inside the pit, finally managed to get the woman out. Xiao Shan also climbed out and sat on the ground. He said, "I'm so tired." "Brother, is this person dead?" "Don't speak nonsense." His elder brother stopped his younger brother's nonsense and put 2 fingers under the woman's nose. Although it was very weak, she was still breathing. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he was still alive. Seeing this, Xiao Shan got up with a grunt. "Brother, is she dying? Why aren't they waking up?" The young man thought for a moment and said, "Let's carry her home. It's a human life after all." Although Xiao Shan was very reluctant, he still followed his brother home. The brothers returned home. Just as they arrived at the door, a fat woman with a headscarf came out. When she saw them, she was also stunned. "Dashan, why did you bring Xiao Shan back? Did you leave something behind?" As soon as she finished speaking, she saw a woman on Big Mountain's back and said, "This brother picked up a dying woman on the road." "Mother, please take a look at her," Xiao Shan said. "Oh, the heavens have pity on us. Dashan, quickly carry this woman to my room and let her lie down. Xiao Shan, quickly go and find Dr. Wang." The woman was obviously a warm-hearted person. She repeatedly urged her son to quickly carry the woman to her bed. Dr. Wang arrived very quickly. He was the only doctor in the village. Usually, the villagers relied on him for headaches and fevers. Most of the people in the village were simple and honest. When they knew that Dashan's family had picked up an injured woman, they hurried over. After checking the pulse of the woman on the bed, Dr. Wang twirled his white beard and said, "This girl fell from a very high place. Fortunately, she probably encountered a tree branch on the way, so she did not fall too badly. There are scratches on her arms. In the end, she fell into your brother's animal trap. It's just a superficial wound. However, the baby in her belly is in some danger. Fortunately, she has taken a lot of medicine to protect the fetus. Otherwise, even a god would not be able to save her now. However, the baby in her belly is not completely out of danger, and she is very weak now. Xiao Shan Yang, this old man will write a few prescriptions to protect the fetus. Ask Xiao Shan to go to the mountains and gather some herbs for this girl to drink. In addition, pay attention to nourishing her body. Xiao Shannyang did not expect this woman to be pregnant. When she heard Dr. Wang say that she fell from a very high place, she thought that perhaps she had met a heartless man and committed suicide. As she thought about it, she felt some pity for the woman on the bed. She hurriedly thanked Dr. Wang and asked Dashan and Xiao Shan to go and gather the herbs. It was as if she had fallen from a very far place. When Jiang Wan woke up, she was at a loss for a moment. Her first action was to lower her head and touch her lower abdomen. Fortunately, the child was still there. She calmed down, but then she had some doubts. At the end of her memory, she was lured by Yuan Chuan in the dark night and fell from a very high place into the abyss. She should have lost her life. Why, was this the world after death? Naturally, this was not the world after death. She quickly understood. She raised her eyes and looked around. This was a small dirt house of a farmer's family. It was somewhat similar to the one she had lived in at Zhanglan's manor. However, it was brighter, more spacious, ventilated, and tidier. The quilt was a blue and white cotton quilt, embroidered with lotus flowers and lotus leaves. The stitches were fine, and the material was relatively comfortable but ordinary. She looked around in a daze. The door was pushed open with a squeak. From outside, a woman with small feet and wearing a blue and white cotton robe walked in. Her face was a little broad, but there was a somewhat amiable smile on her face. That smile seemed very simple and honest. She came in with a bowl of black medicine. When she saw that she had woken up, she was pleasantly surprised. She put the bowl of medicine aside and sat on the edge of the bed. She looked at her and said, "Miss, you're awake. You slept for 3 days and 3 nights. Madam, this is..." Jiang Wan asked with a smile. One would not hit a smiling person. Moreover, this woman looked like an ordinary peasant woman. "You fell into my son's trap. He was the one who carried you back. Our village doctor took your pulse. Your body is very weak. Fortunately, the child is fine. This is medicine to protect the fetus. Drink it first. This is Qingping town. You can just call me Gue Sa, not madam." This woman's smile was hearty, and there was a kind of sincerity in her words. It gave people a good impression. Jiang Wan noticed that there were still calluses on Gue Sa's hands from doing farm work. She smiled faintly and did not say anything more. She followed Gue Sa's advice and smoothly called her Gue Sa. She then picked up the bowl and drank the medicine clean. After that, she said to Gue Sa, "Gue Sa saved my life. You are my benefactor. I am unable to repay your great kindness." "Don't say this." Gue Sa was shocked and quickly said, "This is a human life. How can I leave you in the lurch? Dashan and the others didn't save you for anything in return. Miss, your body is still very weak. Why don't you stay here and recuperate? Since you fell into Dashan's trap, it is also fate. There is no need to be so rigid." After thinking for a while, Gue Sa said, "But where does Miss live?" Miss suddenly disappeared. Your family must be very anxious. Do you want to send a message to your family? Jiang Ruan's expression changed and her gaze suddenly deepened. Yuan Chuan naturally wanted to ensure that she died cleanly. That day when she fell from the cliff, Yuan Chuan might have sent people to search for her. Would they find this place? If that was really the case, wouldn't it be harming these people? Gue Sa saw her frown and thought that she really had something to take things too hard. She carefully probed, "Miss, do you have any difficulties? If you have difficulties, why don't you stay here? The people here are very good." "Miss, I have lived for most of my life and have seen many things. I have also encountered many sufferings. However, I still have something to say to Mississippi. This world is not easy, but it is always good to be alive. Don't easily give up your life at any time." At first, Jiang Yuan did not understand the meaning of Gue Sa's words until Gue Sa put a hand on her lower abdomen and said, "Moreover, you have a child. Even if there is any mistake, the child is innocent. You are the child's mother. You have to raise him." Jiang Yuan finally understood why Gue Sa said this. She thought that she had met with an unkind person and wanted to commit suicide by jumping off the cliff. She smiled at Gue Sa and said, "To tell you the truth, that is not the case. Gue Sa only knows one thing and does not know the other. After my parents passed away, I was married to someone I was engaged to. When I got pregnant, I found out that he wanted to swallow my family's property and even wanted to silence me. I fled in the night and was forced by them to jump off the cliff. Who would have thought that I would end up here?" She had just said it casually. It was not like she had not seen these things in her previous life. Gue Sa was dumbfounded when she said it. She said with righteous indignation, "There is actually such a cruel and unscrupulous person. Miss, don't be afraid. We will go and report this to the officials. Is there no justice in this world? Let's go, there are also scholars in our village. We will immediately write a complaint to the officials." After Jiang Yuan finished speaking, she carefully observed Gue Sa's expression. After confirming that Gue Sa's expression was not fake, she relaxed. She shook her head and revealed a bitter smile. "It's useless. He has people in court. Those people are officials and they will not help me. Moreover, I do not want to alert the enemy. I just want to give birth to the child in peace. However, he will not let me off easily. I am afraid that I will implicate you." "There is no need to worry," Gue Sa shook her head and said, "Our place is very well hidden. Originally, the villagers brought us here to hide from the world. The people outside do not know that this place exists. The distance from here to the outside world is only by climbing up the rattan. That heartless person will not be able to find this place." Jiang Yuan wanted to know whether this place was safe or not. When she heard this, her heart was slightly comforted. With Yuan Chuan's temperament, he must have sent people to search at that time. Since they did not find this place after 3 days and 3 nights, it showed that this place was very well hidden. She smiled slightly and said, "Then I will disturb Gue Sa." "You are welcome," Gue Sa said, "I have not asked Mrs. name." Jiang Yuan replied, "I am Wan Yang." "Wan Yangzi." Gue Sa said, "It is a good name." Looking at Mrs. expression and bearing, you must be a young lady from a wealthy family. I only hope that you will not dislike our place. Jiang Yuan shook her head again and exchanged a few words with Gue Sa. Gue Sa then exhorted her a few more things before leaving. Sitting on the bed, Jiang Yuan sank into contemplation. She did not know what the situation outside was. She wanted to send a message to Xiao Xiao, but who knew whether Yuan Chuan's people were waiting outside? Although they had not found her for the time being, perhaps they were waiting for her to walk into a trap. Moreover, it was not safe to run around with a child. It would be better to rest here and wait for the child to be born before thinking of a way to leave. At that time, Yuan Chuan's matter would most likely be resolved. However, Xiao Xiao would certainly be worried again. Jiang Yuan was somewhat worried. After Jiang Yuan woke up, because her body was still very weak, she did not go out for the past few days. It was also Gue Sa who brought food to her bedside for her to eat. Gue Sa was originally a farmer, but she treated Jiang Yuan very well. The 2 brothers, De Shan and Xiao Shan, went hunting every day and often caught pheasants and hares. Gue Sa also found ways to nourish Jiang Yuan's body. To treat a stranger like this, anyone would be very touched. On the 3rd day, Jiang Yuan went out. Gue Sa rushed several clothes for Jiang Yuan to wear for several nights. Gue Sa's figure was much fatter than Jiang Yuan's, so naturally, Jiang Yuan would not be able to wear her clothes. Gue Sa's husband had died early, and it was she who had raised the 2 brothers, De Shan and Xiao Shan, from a young age. It was said that when Gue Sa was young, she was very fond of her daughter. She probably regarded Jiang Yuan as a daughter bestowed by her superiors. She brought the new clothes to Jiang Yuan. It happened to be a begonia red dress. Although the material was not particularly good, it was still comfortable. The begonia flowers embroidered on the dress were also very fine. Gue Sa said, "This was given to me by a relative who did business outside during the New Year's. I can't pass on this material. It's just right for you young ladies to wear." Jiang Yuan nodded, then washed her face and combed her hair into a fallen horse bun. Only then did she smile and thank Gue Sa. Gue Sa was startled for a moment before she said, "Wan Yang, you are really beautiful." Gue Sa could see that this woman was beautiful, but usually, Jiang Yuan stayed on the bed, looking haggard and pale. No matter how beautiful she was, she did not look very spirited. Now that her illness had recovered, her whole person was full of spirit. Once she washed her face and wore bright clothes, she looked completely different. Gue Sa was delighted. She was probably happy that she had picked up a treasure, but she was also anxious to let everyone see how beautiful Jiang Yuan was. Somewhat childishly, she pushed Jiang Yuan out and smiled, "You should also go out for a walk. Be careful of being bored in the house all day long." Deshan and Xiao Shan were brewing medicine in front of the door. Xiao Shan fanned himself and said angrily, "Recently, Mother doesn't care about us anymore. Most of the chicken soup that we stewed yesterday was given to that woman. Gu, do you think that she's a vixen? How did she captivate Mother?" "Nonsense." Deshan was both angry and amused. "A vixen is not used like this." He raised his head and was about to reprimand his younger brother when he saw his mother walking out of the house with a woman dressed in red. The woman had red lips and white teeth. Her eyebrows and eyes were picturesque. Although her expression was gentle, she was bright and beautiful. She was like a fairy from the heavens, a goddess from the ninth heaven. Her crimson clothes made her skin look like snow. When she saw him look over, the woman smiled slightly. The curve of her lips made Deshan stare blankly, and he was at a loss for what to do. "Deshan, this is Ruan Yangzi. These are Deshan and Xiao Shan." Gue Sa looked at Deshan and Xiao Shan and smiled. Xiao Shan, who had a displeased look on his face, was also stunned when he saw Jiang Yuan. For a moment, he actually stuttered, "Mother, who is this?" "This is the young lady that your eldest brother saved." Gue Sa said, "Come over." Jiang Yuan stepped forward and bowed to the two brothers, "Many thanks to the two little brothers for saving my life." Deshan was only 16 this year, and Xiao Shan was only 13. It was not an exaggeration to call them little brothers, but Deshan and Xiao Shan immediately blushed. Don't blame them, they had never seen such a beautiful woman. Her beauty was different from any other woman in the village. Originally, they thought that teacher Chen's family's daughter, Chen Xiaomei, who could recite poetry every year, was the most beautiful. But in front of this woman, Chen Xiaomei was not even worth mentioning. The two brothers stared at her in a daze. Gue Sa found it a little funny and said, "All right, stop looking. Let's go, Wan Yang, I will take you out to have a look." The news of the two brothers rescuing a fairy spread throughout the village that very day. Many people came to visit and brought food and gifts, wanting to see the child. However, Jiang Yuan listened to Gue Sa's words and walked around the village on a daily basis to relax. This was good for the child. The air here was fresh and there were many trees. If there was anything bad about it, it would be that no matter where she went, there would be people watching. Jiang Ruan's pregnancy was obvious, and this was something that could not be concealed. At first, everyone thought that since she was pregnant, her husband would come looking for her soon. But after so long, there was no movement at all. Some people could not restrain themselves and went to ask Gue Sa what was going on. Jiang Yuan did not ask Gue Sa to keep it a secret, so Gue Sa told her the truth. Everyone immediately sighed and sympathized with Jiang Ruan's experience. At the same time, they found it hard to understand that heartless man. Such a beautiful woman, with such a gentle temperament, how could anyone bear to hurt her? For a moment, some people had this thought. If Jiang Wan stayed here for the rest of her life, if they could marry such a beautiful girl, it would be the fortune of 3 lifetimes. Therefore, every 3 to 5 days, there would be people sending things to Xiao San's house. They even asked Xiao Shan to deliver things to Jiang Wan. Naturally, they were all trying to curry favor. The young lads often dragged Jiang Wan to their homes to eat. In the end, Jiang Wan received great hospitality here. Gue Sa was very happy. She thought that there were many outstanding lads among them. Since they were willing to take care of Jiang Wan for the rest of her life, if Jiang Wan could marry one of them, the child in her womb would have a father. It would be a complete farewell to the past and a new life. However, although Jiang Wan was very gentle to everyone, she did not seem to have that kind of intention. Gue Sa thought that Jiang Wan was too deeply hurt and needed some time. Thus, she was not anxious and only let Jiang Wan choose carefully. Jiang Wan naturally knew the good intentions of these villagers. She saw the admiration of the young lads, but she was completely not in the mood. That was a casual lie, but these days, she missed Xiao Xiao more and more. She did not know how he was now. If he did not receive news of her, he would definitely be very anxious. However, her womb was getting bigger day by day. In another 2 months, she was afraid that she would give birth. At this critical juncture, it was better not to complicate matters. She sat in front of the door and made clothes with Gue Sa. She was making clothes for her own child. During the days when she was under house arrest, she did not dare to make clothes because she was afraid of being discovered. Now that her womb was getting bigger day by day, it was time to make some clothes for the child. Gue Sa chose very good and comfortable materials that would not chafe the delicate skin of the child. As Jiang Wan and Gue Sa were making clothes, Gue Sa said, "You even made clothes for both men and women. I like a daughter, do you like a son or a daughter?" Jiang Wan was slightly startled, then she immediately smiled and said, "I think, it would be good if it was a son. If it was a son who looked like Xiao Xiao, he would also be a handsome and picturesque child. However, he should not inherit his father's cold and cheerless temperament. It would be good if he was a little more lively. However, if Xiao Xiao could teach him martial arts, Xiao Xiao should also be happy. I think it would be good to have a daughter. If the daughter looks as beautiful as you, then I'm afraid that the suitors would break the doorsill of your house." Gue Sa said with a smile. Jiang Wan also smiled. Xiao Xiao probably wanted a daughter. On the surface, he looked cold, but in fact, he was very careful. If there was a daughter hanging around his neck every day and acting spoiled to him, Jiang Wan could not help but burst out laughing as she thought about it. When Gue Sa saw her laugh, she thought that she had thought of something happy, so she also laughed. "Hey, I said that it would be best if it was a boy and a boy and a girl would also be lively." As they were talking, they saw Deshan coming back with a load of firewood. Deshan's mother hurriedly went to collect the firewood and put it in the family storeroom. She said to Deshan, "You talk to Wan Nyangzi, I will come over immediately." Deshan stood in front of the door, scratching his head and looking at Jiang Wan with some shyness. He also did not expect that the girl he had rescued would be so beautiful. The young men in the village all envied her, and every day they would ask him to bring small gifts for Wan Nyangzi. Deshan did not know how to speak, and always liked to sneak glances at her. He knew that Wan Nyangzi came from a wealthy family, and even the most educated teacher in the village praised Wan Nyangzi as a talented girl. She could read many words, had a gentle temperament, and did not have the bashfulness of ordinary girls. She was very generous, and no matter how one looked at her, she was good. Deshan was also a young man who had his first awakening of love, so it was normal for him to like beautiful girls. Moreover, this girl had been rescued by him. Didn't the stories always talk about repaying one's love with one's body? Deshan knew that Wan Nyangzi had a vicious husband, and that she was still being hunted while she was pregnant. His heart ached, and he thought that there was actually such a cruel person in this world. However, he was clumsy and did not know how to please Wan Nyangzi. For example, at this moment, when his mother reminded him, he only looked at Wan Nyangzi and smiled honestly. When Jiang Wan saw this, she only smiled faintly and looked at Deshan. It has been hard on little brother today. When Deshan heard this, he was somewhat at a loss. He scratched his head and said, "It's not hard, hee, it's not hard at all." Chapter 255. On the second day after the spring rain, the weather was good. The new emperor ascended the throne in the middle of the night. All the civil and military officials were waiting at the entrance of the altar. The auspicious time had arrived, and the enthronement ceremony was about to begin. The ceremony was to worship the Tai god. There were 3 levels to the altar, surrounded by green, red, white, black, and yellow altars. White deer, pigs, and white yaks were slaughtered as sacrifices. The Jianghuai region's 3 ridges grass was used as a sacred book, and it was sealed with 5-colored soil. Rare beasts and birds were placed all over the mountain to show auspiciousness. The drums, tai, and flutes were playing. Standing high up on the altar was a youth dressed in a bright yellow robe. The true dragons on his sleeves were about to fly, but his expression was calm. Holding the imperial jade seal, his gaze was sharp and deep. Directly below him, an important official of the court, Xiao Xiao, wearing a red official robe embroidered with a white python, held the edict of the previous emperor, and announced the Ascension Edict word by word. The young man was usually quiet and indifferent, but at this moment, his voice was clear and steady. Every word was like a blow to the hearts of the people, like a silent support, causing the hearts of those who heard it to tremble. The musicians in the palace played, and a high-ranking eunuch helped the new ruler of the great Jin dynasty slowly ascend the throne carved with dragons and phoenixes. The moment he ascended the throne, all the music came to an abrupt end. The hundreds of officials congratulated him, bowing to the deity, and shouted in unison, "Long live the emperor!" The young emperor sat upright, his gaze lightly sweeping over the heads of the important officials. It was a disdainful gaze. Even if the officials did not raise their heads, they could still feel an indescribable pressure. They heard the young man say in a clear voice, "Everyone, rise." The officials raised their eyes. The young emperor's delicate face had completely lost its usual harmless air of nobility, or rather, shed the last bit of camouflage, appearing extremely sharp. Like a lazy cub finally revealing its dense white teeth, and a wave of its claws, it was filled with a biting cold killing intent. This was the pressure that only someone in a high position could bring, and also the calmness of someone who was used to seeing grand scenes. At this moment, it appeared on the body of a teenager. There were many officials who were still hesitant, but at this moment, they all had the same thought in their minds. This young man was born to be a king because he was cunning, dictatorial, cruel, benevolent, and innately cold. That was the innate aura of a king. The great Jin court welcomed a new master. The young man sat upright on the throne, his voice still clear and bright, but his tone was already solemn, slowly filled with an inviolable confidence. He said, "Today we have a national ceremony, granting amnesty to the world. Those who obey me will prosper, those who oppose me will perish. I am the Son of Heaven, I am the world." These 3 sentences, each one sonorous and resounding, were like the proverbs of the end of the world that had been passed down from prehistoric times, drifting and reverberating between the heavens and the earth. The great Jin dynasty had no other master. This youth was the current emperor of the great Jin dynasty, the once useless prince, Xian Pei. The golden dragon on the corner of the robe was about to soar into the sky. The young man revealed a smile. This smile was both clear and vague at the same time. Everyone who saw it couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. No one could guess what the emperor was thinking. A complicated expression appeared on the face of the Grand Tutor standing on the right. He had made the right move in the end. This youth really did have the chi of a true dragon as he had thought, but he had hidden it even more deeply than he had imagined. However, he did not regret it. As the saying goes, there are only 1 or 2 times in a lifetime when you should live for yourself. Supporting Xian Pei to ascend to the throne was what he wanted to do. The moment the coronation ceremony was completed, the leader of the imperial guards suddenly rushed in and said, "Your Majesty, it's not good. The 8th prince has led a group of ministers in rebellion. Most of the imperial guards have defected, and they are now surrounding the capital from outside the city." The young emperor on the high seat smiled faintly, as if he was not surprised by this. Xianli did not attend today's ascension ceremony, perhaps it was a tacit fact that everyone understood. As a loser, Xianli could not watch the throne fall into the hands of others without any grudges, and it was even more impossible for him to watch the ascension ceremony complete with his own eyes. But to choose this time to act, was it impulsive or completely prepared? It was really too unscrupulous. Among the officers and officials of the great Jin dynasty, there are rebellious ministers rebelling. The previous dynasty had 8 princes rebelling. Crown Prince Hongxi single-handedly judged the rebellion and did not hesitate to die on the battlefield. Now that we have encountered such a situation, coinciding with the coronation ceremony, we are the current emperor and should fight together with you. Take up the weapons in your hands. For the stability and prosperity of the great Jin dynasty, expel the bandits and establish our great Jin dynasty. We will not allow those with evil intentions to encroach on our country. Whoever covets our country, we will trample on their bodies. The majestic great Jin dynasty will be monopolized by the heavens. He was not the least bit flustered by this sudden news, and even used this statement to raise the morale of the civil and military officials. Every word of the previous dynasty's crown Prince Hongxi's metaphor expressed the confidence and determination of the young emperor. But even with such arrogant words, the crowd did not feel that he was boasting. Instead, they felt that this youth's words were powerful and resonant, as if he could do it as soon as he said it. Therefore, after a short while, a general shouted, "We pledge our lives to protect the great Jin dynasty. We pledge our lives to follow your majesty." As if the first person had spoken, more and more people were affected by this kind of agitation. Their blood surged uncontrollably, and they all knelt down to ask for battle. The shouts grew louder and louder, reaching the heavens. In the end, only the vigorous voices of hundreds of men could be heard resounding on the altar, "We pledge our lives to follow your majesty." Xian Pei smiled in satisfaction and slowly stood up. The golden dragon on the corner of his robe glared angrily as he said firmly, "Fight! Fight!" The speed at which Xian Pei won over the hearts of the people was much faster than everyone had expected. Not only did this youth gain the support of the common people, he also quickly gained the support of the civil and military officials. Not long after the coronation ceremony, someone revealed a secret. It turned out that there used to be a shop in the great Jin dynasty that helped the poor people every year. It was the most benevolent and righteous shop. Who would have known that the owner behind those shops was Xian Pei? The common people were naturally deeply grateful. Having a benevolent and righteous emperor was better than anything else. Moreover, this emperor had been issued by the previous emperor, so naturally, they would not hesitate to side with him. Xianli leading an army to rebel was originally a disgraceful act. These days, the common people around the capital had suffered because of the war. Xian Pei sent people to send things to comfort the injured people, and in a short period of time, he won the hearts of many people. As for the imperial court, there were already some old officials who supported Xian Pei, so Xian Pei's days were not too difficult. Moreover, he had his own unique way of winning over people. Towards those officials who were still unconvinced, he used both kindness and authority, and it actually had a miraculous effect. Moreover, the longer they interacted with this newly ascended emperor, the more all the officials felt one thing at the same time. Xian Pei was not like a young emperor who had just ascended to the throne. Everything he did, including the way he handled political affairs, was like that of a veteran official. Even when faced with a difficult situation, he could skillfully resolve it in front of him. This feeling was as if it was not his first time as emperor, but rather that he had been emperor for many years. He was so familiar with it that he did not even need the guidance of the surrounding officials. With this understanding, the officials would be somewhat wary of the emperor. This way, the relationship between the emperor and his officials would be even more stable. What these officials did not know was that Xian Pei was someone who had died once. Although he was a useless prince in his previous life, he had still been with Xian Li for many years, and he had seen Xian Li's way of doing things. After being reborn, he had been planning for this day for a long time, so naturally, everything went smoothly. However, he did not know that his actions in front of the officials were like a true dragon descending from the heavens. If there was anything special, it would be that Xian Li's people were harder to deal with than expected. Although they knew that he had secretly bribed many people, now that these people had all surfaced, they could not help but be shocked. Among them were many veterans of 2 dynasties, loyal officials. Even half of the people in charge of the imperial army were now in Xian Li's hands. Therefore, they could be in a deadlock with Xian Pei for such a long time. Moreover, their scattered troops were also converging. Not only the capital, but many other places also began to have chaos. Among them, there was no lack of people from the southern border. Those who had long been hiding in various places were also mobilized, and most of the southern border's military forces were also quietly transferred over. In the end, Xian Li had put in a lot of effort this time. Xian Pei sat in the imperial study, countless memorials were all piled up like a mountain on one side. In this chaotic time, he still had the mind to go through the memorials one by one. At that time, Jiang Yuan had once told him to deal with myriad changes by not changing, and let nature take its course. As the emperor of a dynasty, if he was in chaos, the hearts of the entire court would also be in chaos. He was calm, and he also believed that Xian Li would certainly not be able to break this situation. He believed that Xiao Xiao was a person who could solve this. The main thing that the emperor needed to do was to use people, not to do things himself. Now, he used people very well. On the surface, Xian Li seemed to have the upper hand, but in fact, he was at a disadvantage. Now, the person that Xian Pei was most worried about was naturally Jiang Yuan. There was still no news of Jiang Yuan until now. This was exactly what Xian Pei was worried about. At that time, Xian Pei also knew about Jiang Yuan's plan. As Jiang Yuan told Qi Feng, Xian Li would definitely think of a way to use Jiang Yuan to make a deal with Xiao Xiao. Now that Xian Li had raised the flag of rebellion, the next step was naturally to use Jiang Yuan to exchange for benefits with Xiao Xiao. What Xian Li wanted was nothing more than the control of the genie guard. However, several days had already passed. Why hadn't Xian Li made a move? At this moment, it was not a battle of endurance. Every moment was a life. Xian Li would definitely be impatient to make a deal with Xiao Xiao. For there to be no movement, there was almost only one possibility: Jiang Yuan was simply not in his hands. Why was Jiang Yuan not in his hands? Firstly, Jiang Yuan had escaped, so Xian Li could not find her. This was not wrong with what Jiang Yuan had said. She said that she would also find a chance to escape. Secondly, Jiang Yuan was now in some danger. This was the truth that Xian Pei was most unwilling to guess. He told himself that Jiang Yuan was clever and cunning. Only she would scheme against others. The most likely scenario was that she had schemed against others to escape. But he could not help but think in the worst direction. Xian Pei was also worried. If it was not what he thought, what should he do? If Jiang Yuan had really escaped, why did she not think of a way to contact them? Where was she now? Xian Pei thought about it, and his heart gave birth to a kind of depression. He thought of something and suddenly reached out to Mingyu, who was standing on the side, and said, "What is Xiao Xiao doing recently?" Mingyu replied, "Young master is chasing after Yuan Chuan." Yuan Chuan? Xian Pei frowned. Thinking that Yuan Chuan was the masked man who liked to follow Dan Zhen, he said, "Why is he chasing after Yuan Chuan? Is it the whereabouts of Junju?" "It's not that." Ming Yu patiently replied, "Recently, there have been reports from the brocade guards that Xian Li's men are also chasing after Yuan Chuan. Yuan Chuan is currently on the run. Young master feels that there is something fishy about this matter. Perhaps he can find out from Yuan Chuan that the situation has taken a turn for the better. Thus, he has been chasing after him." Ming Yu was Xiao Xiao's person, but Xian Pei was now very comfortable using her. Regarding Jiang Ruan's matter, Xiao Xiao had also instructed that there was no need to hide it from Xian Pei. Ming Yu did not conceal anything and told him everything she knew. Xian Li is also chasing after Yuan Chuan. Xian Pei sat up straight and his expression became grave. "Why?" The night was as dark as ink. Between the steep and precipitous mountain roads, there were two riders galloping through the mountains. The horse and man in front were obviously already somewhat panicked. They were only frantically whipping forward with all their might. The horse at the back was much more relaxed. The color of the horse's fur was bright, and its hooves were vigorous and powerful. It was obviously a fine horse. The person on the horse at the back was dressed in black, almost blending in with the night. However, he suddenly leaped up and with the tip of his foot on the horse's back, his body fiercely flew forward. The person in front knew that the situation was not good and wanted to immediately turn the horse's head in another direction. Who knew that the person at the back was flying diagonally in the air and suddenly shot out a stone from his hand. The stone sneaked into the front horse's leg. The horse's leg softened and it immediately knelt on the ground. The person on the horse immediately fell down. In a flash, the person in black swept in front of the person. Before the person could react, a dagger was already at the person's throat. "Third brother, wait for me." Another slightly noisy voice came from behind, followed by a wave of irritated horse hooves. There were many people rushing over. When they came closer, they saw some imperial guards holding torches. The two people at the front were not dressed as imperial guards. Upon a closer look, it was Mo Tsong and Chi Feng. Mo Tsong walked forward with a torch in his hand. When he saw the person on the ground, he could not help but cry out, "Third brother, are you sure that he is the southern border envoy?" At that time, although he was wearing a mask, he did not look like this, right? "Who is this? He looks like a ghost." The gray clothes of the man on the ground were already in tatters and his hair was disheveled. The most frightening thing was not his untidy clothes, but his unrecognizable appearance. His face seemed to have been burned by something. It was like half of the wall had been torn off. His skin was mottled and some were still hanging, revealing the exposed flesh underneath. The most frightening thing was a scar near his eye. It was as if the entire eye socket had been burned. Looking at his entire body, there were similar burn marks. It seemed that he had not been properly treated. Pus had already begun to flow out of his body. As soon as he walked closer, there was a foul smell. "Where is she? Why is Xian Li chasing after you?" Xiao Xiao did not pay attention to Mo Tsong's words. He did not loosen the dagger at Yuan Chuan's throat. At first, it was a spy from the embroidered uniform guard who had discovered that Xian Li's men were chasing after someone. That person looked very much like the previous southern border envoy. After informing Xiao Xiao, Xiao Xiao immediately personally came to capture him. In reality, it was indeed true. Yuan Chuan was already seriously injured. This was naturally the work of Xian Li's men. If he had not been seriously injured, with Yuan Chuan's cunning character, he might not have been caught so easily by Xiao Xiao. Even so, there were still many suspicious points. The southern border and Xian Li had always been allies. Why would Xian Li suddenly want to kill his own people? If the alliance was broken, then Xian Li had not been chasing after Qi Man. Moreover, no one had seen any trace of Dan Zhen for a long time. Yuan Chuan must know where Jiang Yuan was, because it was the southern border people who had first kidnapped her. Xian Li did not dare to come forward personally. It had always been the southern border people who had guarded Jiang Yuan. Now that Yuan Chuan was being chased, could it be related to Jiang Yuan? When Yuan Chuan heard this, he sneered and said, "Xiao Wangye, do you want to know why Xian Li wants to kill me? Do you really want to know? Don't talk nonsense." Without waiting for Yuan Chuan to finish speaking, Mo Tsong interrupted him, "Hand over the whereabouts of my third sister-in-law. This young master will guarantee that you will die a painless death. If you don't say it, I never wanted to live." Yuan Chuan looked up at Xiao Xiao, who was coldly staring at him. Under the light of the fire, Xiao Xiao's face was extraordinarily handsome, but also extremely cold. Yuan Chuan could not help but think of Dan Zhen's infatuation with this person in front of him. But this person only had Jiang Yuan, that vicious woman, in his heart. His heart suddenly gave birth to a grievance, and he almost provoked him with a smile. "Xiao Wangye must know, so naturally, I can only tell you the truth. Xiao Wangye should know that Xian Li has always wanted to use Wang Fei to do business with Xiao Wangye, but I ruined this business. Do you know why?" He grinned, and his muscles pulled at the scars, making him look even more like a ghost. "Because I killed her. That woman is dead, and Xian Li lost a bargaining chip to negotiate with you, so he came to kill me." As soon as his voice fell, he felt the dagger in his throat suddenly move forward by an inch. A cold liquid seeped out of his throat. He closed his eyes, but he felt that the dagger did not move forward. Xiao Xiao's cold voice sounded in his ear, "You are lying." Both Qi Feng and Mo Tsong breathed a sigh of relief. Just now, they were afraid that Xiao Xiao would stab Yuan Chuan to death in a fit of anger. If there was anything that could make Xiao Xiao emotionally unstable, it could only be Jiang Yuan. Anyone who heard such a curse on their wife would not feel good, let alone someone as protective as Xiao Xiao. Mo Tsong angrily said, "What nonsense are you talking about? Do you think that my third brother will believe your nonsense? What ability do you have to kill my third sister-in-law? I'm afraid that you won't even be able to touch my third sister-in-law's little finger. Simply ridiculous." Yuan Chuan suddenly burst into laughter. He laughed so hard that his mouth was full of blood. He looked at Xiao Xiao, gritted his teeth, and said word by word, "So what? I not only killed her, I also killed the bastard in her stomach." Chapter 256. What child? Xiao Xiao was slightly startled and immediately asked. "So you still don't know?" Yuan Chuan pretended to be surprised as he looked at Xiao Xiao. Then, as if he had just remembered, he said slowly, "No wonder you don't know, because I also just found out not long ago." Wang Fei hid the fact that she was pregnant very well. At that time, no one knew. She even raised a dog and used the name of raising a dog to snatch food from the dog's mouth. This was an unthinkable thing. It was probably for the seed in her belly. But in the end, one corpse and 2 lives were lost. TSK, the little heir of your Jinying Wangfu died in his mother's belly before he was born. Yuan Chuan's voice had not yet faded when he felt his shoulder blade suddenly dislocate. Xiao Xiao did not kill him, but he also did not tolerate him so easily. He was originally a martial artist, and this time, he did not show any mercy. Naturally, he dislocated Yuan Chuan's shoulder blade. Yuan Chuan could not help but scream. Third brother. Mo Tsong was somewhat dazed. Yuan Chuan even said this kind of thing. He was very afraid that Xiao Xiao would lose his sense of propriety. But Xiao Xiao only said coldly, "You are lying." Yuan Chuan endured the pain and said with a smile, "Xiao Wangye, why deceive yourself? You must not say that Wang Fei did not die just because you cannot bear the news. My life was finally exchanged for Jiang Yuan and the little heir of Jinying Wangfu. If you want to kill me, do as you please. You want to borrow my hand to commit suicide, but I will not do as you wish. Xiao Xiao's gaze was very cold, and his tone was so cold that it could freeze. You are loyal to Dan Zhen. When Dan Zhen died, you only had revenge left. If you said that your great enmity was avenged, why did you not die? You still had to struggle at death's door to avoid Xianli's pursuit. It can be seen that our Wan is still alive, and you are looking for her whereabouts. Xiao Xiao's words made Yuan Chuan's heart involuntarily jump. Indeed, that day, he had watched Jiang Ruan fall off the cliff. It was a foolproof life, but when he sent people down the mountain to look for the body, they could not find the whereabouts of the body. Then, Xianli's people discovered some clues. Qi Man had probably thought that he had succeeded and had betrayed him quickly. Since Xianli knew that Jiang Ruan had died in Yuan Chuan's hands, he naturally wanted to kill Yuan Chuan to pay for it with his life. Originally, Yuan Chuan had planned to follow Dan Zhen after killing Jiang Ruan, but now, as long as Jiang Ruan's body was not found, he would not be able to rest easy. He felt that Jiang Ruan still had some tricks up her sleeves. Since he could not confirm Jiang Ruan's death, he could not die so easily at Xianli's hands. Thus, he could only evade Xianli's pursuit like a stray dog while inquiring about Jiang Ruan's whereabouts. He didn't expect that Xiao Xiao would notice this. Before Xianli's men could catch him, Xiao Xiao had already caught him. Now that he had been caught by Xiao Xiao, there was no chance for him to escape. The only thing he could do now was to disgust Xiao Xiao and tell him that Jiang Ruan was already dead. He knew that in the end, Jiang Ruan was pregnant. If Xiao Xiao found out that Jiang Ruan was pregnant and had died a violent death, he would probably never be able to let it go in this lifetime. Dan Zhen had followed Xiao Xiao for a lifetime, and everything he had done was to imprison Xiao Xiao by his side. But in the end, because of this, he had lost his life and was buried in the unfamiliar land of the great Jin dynasty. Since Yuan Chuan could not confirm whether Jiang Ruan was alive or dead, letting Xiao Xiao live in pain, living a lifetime of guilt and self-blame, was also helping Dan Zhen vent his resentment. His thoughts were not wrong, but he didn't expect that his intentions would be seen through by Xiao Xiao. Yuan Chuan raised his head and met Xiao Xiao's eyes, which were like cold stars. He only felt that those eyes were very sharp, almost as if they could see through his heart. His heart shook, but he raised his lips and said, "How should I explain this to you clearly? Xiao Wangye seems to understand me very well. But I am still alive not because of Jiang Ruan. There is more than one enemy who killed the holy maiden. Jiang Ruan was only the most ruthless one, so naturally, I want to kill her. Since you don't believe me, why don't you ask Her Royal Highness the Princess?" That's right, it's the same for Xianli. That day, the fire burned down the entire house, and she was burned to death inside. Not even her ashes were left. Isn't this the reason why Xianli wants to kill me? Otherwise, as long as Jiang Ruan is still alive, at this moment, why do you think Xianli hasn't handed her over to you to make a deal? Xiao Xiao did not speak, but Yuan Chuan felt the dagger against his throat tremble slightly. Even if it was just a smile, Yuan Chuan could still feel that Xiao Xiao was nervous. This person, Xiao Xiao, was rumored to be cold-hearted, but once such a person had something to worry about, it would be for a lifetime. Dan Zhen liked Xiao Xiao, so Yuan Chuan had naturally inquired about Xiao Xiao's news. He knew that Xiao Xiao had deep feelings for Jiang Ruan. No matter how rational and calm a man was, when faced with the possibility of losing his loved one forever, he would not be indifferent. At the end of the day, Xiao Xiao was only an ordinary person. He was not a god, and he also had 7 emotions and 6 desires. Presumably, at this moment, Yuan Chuan's words had caused him to feel apprehensive. That day, when the fire started, Xianli's people had been knocked out by Yuan Chuan's drug, leaving behind only his own people. Qi Man had already cleaned up those people, so when Xianli's people woke up, they would only know that Jiang Ruan had died a violent death in the fire. Moreover, the remains that were left behind in the fire were indeed justifiable. In order to avoid Xian Li's anger, those bodyguards would naturally unanimously separate themselves from the matter. Since Qi Man had said that it was Yuan Chuan who had set the fire, it was equivalent to having a scapegoat. Naturally, they would unanimously point all the blame at Yuan Chuan. Moreover, even if Yuan Chuan died, he would not reveal the fact that Jiang Ruan might still be alive. As long as Xian Li knew that there was a slight possibility that Jiang Ruan might still be alive, he would think of every possible way to rescue Jiang Ruan. So until now, all Xian Li knew was that Yuan Chuan had burned down Jiang Ruan's house and also burned Jiang Ruan to death. This was exactly what Yuan Chuan wanted to achieve. Confirming Jiang Ruan's death, on one hand, he could make Xiao Xiao suffer for a lifetime, and on the other hand, he could completely cut off the possibility of Xian Li obtaining Danzhen from Xiao Xiao. Jiang Ruan's words were not wrong. If it was Jiang Ruan who had schemed to let Danzhen burn the imperial edict and finally die a violent death, then Xian Li was the direct murderer who had killed Danzhen. Yuan Chuan had no way to confront Xian Li directly, but he would never let Xian Li have an advantage. As long as Jiang Ruan died, Xiao Xiao and Xian Li were bound to be irreconcilable enemies. For the rest of his life, Xiao Xiao would think of ways to take revenge. Wouldn't it be fun to watch enemies kill each other? Lao San, Qi Feng quickly stepped forward and glanced at Yuan Chuan. Naturally, his heart was also affected by Yuan Chuan's words, but he still had some rationality. Xiao Xiao looked at Jiang Ruan from the perspective of a husband looking at his wife, so naturally, he thought that Jiang Ruan must have had a very hard time. But in Qi Feng's eyes, Jiang Ruan was not such a weak person. If she could die so easily, it would definitely not be her. If she was pregnant, she would do her best to survive. Therefore, he looked at Xiao Xiao and said, "I'm afraid this person's words are deceptive. Third sister-in-law is not someone who can be killed so easily. If she is pregnant, she will only be stronger. As for this person, we still need to investigate further. As for now, take him away." Xiao Xiao suddenly withdrew his dagger and looked down at Yuan Chuan. Yuan Chuan looked at Xiao Xiao with some pride, but at this moment, under Xiao Xiao's gaze, he actually felt a kind of fear from the bottom of his heart. Subconsciously, he had an impulse to run away. It was a kind of coldness that completely abandoned human emotions, as if he was looking at a dead body, or something that was even worse than a dead body. What did he want to do? Xiao Xiao said lightly, "The brocade guards interrogate a criminal. Whatever means you have, use them all. Don't let him die." After saying this, he turned around and mounted his horse. Disregarding the people behind him, he spurred the horse away. "Hey!" Mo Tsong wanted to chase after him, but was pulled back by Qi Feng. He looked at Xiao Xiao's receding figure with some complexity and said, "Let him be alone." "Then what about him?" Mo Tsong looked at Yuan Chuan on the ground and asked. A strange smile floated on Qi Feng's face. He was born handsome and usually had a graceful and courteous appearance, but when this smile appeared on his face, it seemed to make his face suddenly carry a trace of murderous intent. It was similar to Xiao Xiao's for a moment. He slowly said, "Did you not hear what Master said? Bring him back to the brocade guards and serve him with great torture." This time, even Jean 1 and Jean 2, who were at the side, showed a strange expression. The brocade guards were a group of killers. They would never say that they were good people. Their methods of interrogating criminals were also endless, and there was no benefit to be gained. It was just that Xiao Xiao had always been accustomed to the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves to kill with a single blade. He rarely used the punishment set by the old Jinying king. Now that he was specially taken care of, naturally, Yuan Chuan would suffer. A few of the brocade guards stepped forward and crippled Yuan Chuan's martial arts. They broke his limbs to prevent him from committing suicide. Then, they carefully searched his body for any hidden poisons. They threw him almost naked onto the back of a horse. Only then did they go back together. That night, Xiao Xiao did not come back until the third watch. After coming back, he did not say anything. He locked himself in the study and no one was allowed to come in. Housekeeper Lin stood at the door and sighed. Chi Feng came over and looked at the light in the study absent-mindedly. After catching Yuan Chuan, Xiao Xiao immediately took the brocade guards to investigate the temple that Yuan Chuan mentioned. The temple was dozens of miles away from the capital. It was a long journey, but Xiao Xiao did not care and went there. That place was a place where leprosy patients lived. There was a broken temple where the monks were also leprosy patients. The people of Nanjiang killed the local patients and then disguised themselves as patients and monks. Naturally, they were able to deceive the patrolling guards. After all, no one thought that there would be someone hiding there. If they were not careful and were infected with leprosy, they would be ruined. By the time Xiao Xiao and the brocade guards rushed there without stopping, the people of Nanjiang had already left. The building was empty, leaving only the bodies of the patients that had been hastily buried in the ground. There was a part of the temple that was scorched black, and it looked like it was almost destroyed into ashes. When Xiao Xiao saw the ruins, he was shocked. He personally went inside to check it out. The embroidered uniform guards also went in with him. The house had been burnt beyond recognition. However, the deep scratches left by the deceased could still be vaguely seen on the walls. They were the fingerprints of a woman. The bed curtains and the like had been burned clean, but the layout of the house showed that it was a woman's residence. Moreover, there was an iron chain used to tie a dog. Yuan Chuan had said that in order to conceal the fact that she was pregnant, she raised a dog and even used the dog's mouth as a cover. The iron chain used to tie the dog undoubtedly proved something. Yi Feng, who had gone to search for other things, finally found some medicine to help with miscarriage in a servant's room. All the signs indicated that Jiang Ruan's current situation was not very optimistic. Perhaps, it pointed to disaster. The brocade guards present all knew this, but no one dared to say it. In the end, Yi Feng could not help but feel sad. He walked to Xiao Xiao's side and said, "Master, everything had been burned to ashes. Even the ashes had been mixed in. How could they be buried? Could it be a cenotaph?" In any case, Xiao Xiao must have endured a great deal of grief. However, Xiao Xiao looked at the ruins indifferently and said, "Wang Fei is not here, continue to search." If Jiang Wan was not here, where else could she be? Xian Li did not send anyone to search for Jiang Ruan's whereabouts. There were only two possibilities, either Jiang Ruan was in Xian Li's hands, or Jiang Ruan was already dead. But if Jiang Ruan was still in Xian Li's hands, Xian Li would not hide it from others. Everything in front of them seemed to indicate that Yuan Chuan was not lying. There was only one thought in the hearts of all the brocade guards, and that was that Xiao Xiao was deceiving himself. This man, who had always been calm and rational, who was strong enough to face any situation with all kinds of calm, was now very afraid to face the truth. Therefore, he was avoiding the truth, but no one had the heart to expose this fact. They did not want to cruelly expose Xiao Xiao. Then let's assume that Jiang Ruan was still alive. Princess Jinying was still alive. After all, the body had not been found, right? If the body was not found, then it was probably still alive. Everyone could only deceive themselves like this. Master Qi, Housekeeper Lin said, It's better to persuade young master. Housekeeper Lin, don't kill me, I can't persuade him. Qi Feng smiled bitterly, I regret it now. I can't even persuade myself, he said silently in his heart. Jiang Ruan's plan had been discussed with him at the beginning, and he had also agreed to it. When the news of the brocade guards reached his ears, Qi Feng only felt that time had stopped at that moment. She appeared to be very strong, and he thought that she was very strong, but he forgot that she was also just an ordinary woman. Jiang Ruan's previous life was miserable. He was determined to protect her in this life, but was this how he protected her? Xiao Xiao suddenly reached out to cover his face. The wind in this room was very cold. This small study suddenly became big and empty, and he felt very lonely. He slowly let go of his hand, took a piece of paper on the table, took out a pen from the pen holder, ground the ink, moistened the pen, and began to write. He wrote, "My wife, R1." He wrote seriously and carefully. The light reflected his eyelashes, making them straight and slender. His side profile was heroic and handsome, but he looked very sad. After he finished writing word by word, he put away the large piece of paper. He folded it into an envelope, rolled it into a small iron tube, and blew a whistle. A snow pigeon flew in. Xiao Xiao tied the small iron tube to the pigeon's leg, and stretched out his fingers to touch the pigeon's head. Then, with a wave of his hand, the snow pigeon flew out of the window. He looked at the window, lost in thought. Outside the room, Chi Feng and Steward Lin looked at the same time at the snow pigeon that flew out of the room and disappeared into the night. They both sighed softly. Where would this snow pigeon send the letter from the person in the room? Could it still be delivered? Chapter 257. Xian Li's people were becoming more and more arrogant by the day. Perhaps it was because he realized that the fight for the throne was not as easy as he had imagined, or perhaps it was because he had reached the stage of a life and death struggle, his attacks were becoming more and more fierce. Xian Li was like a hungry wolf that tore away his refined appearance, gradually revealing his true colors. His methods were unyielding. Every time he went to a village or tribe, he would force the commoners to hand over their food and expenses. And the southern Jiang people who accompanied him in the rebellion were even more cruel, and in some places there was even the crime of slaughtering villages. Slaughtering villages was something that only the most ruthless armies that invaded other countries would do. But Xian Li's people actually did it. Although there were millions of corpses in the fight for the throne, it was mostly a conflict within the court, and was very far from the lives of the commoners. At most, the commoners would scold the person who had ascended to the throne. To be involved in it and lose one's life was the first time in the history of the Great Jin dynasty. Xian Li's actions were no longer a fight for the throne. Because of the southern Jiang people, it was almost naked, unscrupulously usurping the country for the world to see. For a time, the commoners of the Great Jin court were filled with complaints. Xian Li's reputation was like a street rat, and everyone wanted to beat him up. He is a very proud and arrogant person. Now that he has become like this, he naturally does not feel good. Mingyu said to the emperor sitting high up in front of her. No, it could only be said that the young emperor was sitting on the dragon throne. His actions were not very proper, but rather somewhat mischievous. But even so, it did not make people look down on him. Xian Pei lazily played with the white jade thumb ring in his hand, and said with a smile, "This is the path he found for himself. Don't blame Zhen." It was like a lion cub had caught a small mouse, and was playing with the mouse in the palm of its hand, watching it struggle. Mingyu lowered her head. Now that she was no longer the personal palace maid of the prince, Xiao Xiao did not intend to take her back. Xian Pei also could not leave her. After all, there were many things that he could rest assured with her handling. She had already become Aunt Mingyue, and her social status had risen along with it. Everyone was envious of her good luck, for she had chosen the right master. Who would have thought that the useless prince would have such a glorious day, becoming the master of the world in one leap? But only Mingyu knew that from the first day she followed Xian Pei, she knew that Xian Pei was not as simple as he seemed on the surface. Everything this young man did had the same goal as Xian Li. It was just that Xian Li's strength was too strong at that time, and Xian Pei, as a weakling, forcibly snatched this fat piece of meat from Xian Li's mouth. At that time, even she did not expect that Xian Pei would be the final winner. Xian Pei, and said Xian Pei. "Bring him in," Xian Pei said. When Mu Shiro was brought in, her expression was no longer as cold as before. She was still beautiful, but there was something else between her brows. Upon closer inspection, there seemed to be a sense of gentleness and ambition. The cold and inviolable temperament was nowhere to be seen. She was still beautiful, but there was something more between her brows. At a closer look, it seemed to be a peaceful spirit. She walked in and saw Xianli. Without a word, she knelt in front of Xianli. "Thank you, Your Majesty." After she was released from prison, she was under house arrest because her crimes could not be completely cleared, and she did not have any power behind her. Without knowing the situation outside, she quickly changed her words based on Xian Pei's dragon robe. This was enough to show that she was a smart woman. Xian Pei said, "This is the result you asked for." In the end, the Mu clan supported Xianli in the final battle for the throne. Perhaps it was because they felt that Xian Pei was only a young boy and might not have any future. Perhaps it was because Xian Pei had no bargaining chip, and they did not have the peace of mind that Xianli had. In the end, the Mu clan abandoned their daughter in the palace and turned to Xianli's side. Now, they rebelled with Xianli. Clearly, they had abandoned Mu Shiro in the palace. "When father sent me to the palace, he wanted me to be a high official with a generous salary. Unfortunately, I did not get what he wanted. He was disheartened and tried to make a living on his own. Now, I have nothing to do with him. Since Your Majesty has shown me mercy, the Mu clan has nothing to do with me." Mu Shiro said. Mingyu listened on the side without any change in her expression. When the Mu clan wanted to send this ice beauty to the palace, Mu Shiro herself did not agree. It was not difficult to find out if one wanted to. Mu Shiro had a fiery temper, but for some reason, she still agreed to enter the palace. Everyone in the world had a bargaining chip and something they wanted. Mu Shiro had exposed such a big weakness, so Xian Pei naturally took advantage of it. That day, he sent Mingyu to find out the reason. The reason was shocking. This was a secret of the Mu clan. Mu Shiro was not old Master Mu's biological daughter, but his mistress. She made him a cuckold outside. Old Master Mu did not know and only found out the truth after Mu Shiro was 10 years old. He wanted to find a chance to deal with Mu Shiro, but in the end, a colleague reminded him that Mu Shiro was so beautiful, it was better to exchange her for a good official position in the future. There were no walls in the world that did not have ears. Moreover, there were many disputes in the inner courtyard of an official. Mu Shiro was born from a mistress, so she disliked the daughters of other wives and concubines. Later, when she learned that she was not her biological daughter, she mocked and ridiculed her. Mu Shiro knew at a young age that she was not Old Master Mu's biological daughter. Old Master Mu had an eldest son, Mu Feng. Mu Feng was the person who treated Mu Shiro the best in the entire residence. He was gentle and considerate, so Mu Shiro fell in love with her nominal brother. This was a scandal and incest. Mu Shiro did not dare to tell anyone. On the day she entered the palace, Old Master Mu told her that the portrait had been sent up. If Mu Shiro refused and even committed suicide, the entire Mu residence would be destroyed. The young and promising Mu Feng would also lose his future because of Mu Shiro's actions. Mu Shiro did not have a good life in the Mu clan. She wanted nothing more than to die with the entire clan, but she could not let go of Mu Feng. For her lover, she accepted her fate and entered the palace. However, Mu Shiro was a strong and unyielding person. Even if she loved Mu Feng, she hated Old Master Mu and the heartless Mu clan. She made a deal with Xian Pei. Xian Pei wanted the empire. As long as he sat on the throne one day, he would return her freedom and suppress the Mu clan. Other than Mu Feng, he would never hire anyone else. Xian Pei agreed. Then, Mu Shiro maintained her cold personality and pretended that she had to die. Old Master Mu was not happy about this because Mu Shiro had no intention of pleasing the emperor. She thought herself to be virtuous but was not favored by men. It was a useless move. Therefore, when Mu Shiro was imprisoned for killing the emperor, no one from the Mu clan said anything. When Dong Yinger was imprisoned, the Dong clan even asked about it. When Wang Lian was in trouble, the Wang clan also helped. Only the Mu clan stayed away without hesitation as if they were avoiding the plague. Mingyu felt a chill in her heart. Xianpei looked at Mu Shiro and said, I will give you a chance to change your conditions. After the Mu clan's rebellion, Mu Shiro knew that the Mu clan had no way to survive. However, she still loved Mu Feng. She was willing to exchange her life and freedom for Mu Feng's. It was not easy to make a deal with Xianpei, but Mu Shiro still wanted to do it. Mingyu did not know why, but she felt that Xianpei was especially kind to Mu Shiro, as if he had given her many opportunities. Mingyu had seen how ruthless Xianpei could be. There had to be a special reason for him to be good to Mu Shiro. Thank you, Your Majesty, but there is no need. Mu Shiro said, I only hope that Your Majesty can spare my eldest brother's life. I am not an unreasonable person. Xianpei smiled. You have done so much for me, and I will keep my word. But think about it, your good eldest brother has never come to the palace to greet you. There is no way he does not know about the Mu clan's rebellion. He knows that you are still in the palace but did not save you. He knows that you will become the main culprit if he keeps you, so he has no intention of saving you. Mu Shiro, I can tell you, in your eyes, the entire Mu clan may be evil, and only he is good. Unfortunately, in my eyes, he and the Mu clan are birds of a feather. The kindness in your eyes is only the kindness he wants you to see. Mu Shiro was very smart. She did not refute Xianli directly. She only stared at the ground to express her persistence. Xianpei thought for a moment and smiled. Fine, I have told you 1,000 times, but you still do not understand. Why don't you see him in person? Mu Shiro raised her head abruptly. Xianpei signaled Mingyu with his eyes. Mingyu walked to Mu Shiro's side and sealed her acupoints. Then, Mingyu helped Mu Shiro to stand behind the screen. Soon, a man was escorted into the hall. It was none other than Mu Feng. Mu Dalong. Xianpei's tone was still frivolous. He smiled and said, long time no see. Mu Feng belonged to the group of young and promising minor officials in the court. Such a young man could have unlimited potential in the future. So even if he looked inconspicuous now, he was a very important person in the eyes of others. It was not that Xianpei had never met this person before. But in Mu Feng's eyes, Xianpei was not enough to make him surrender. A brat still wet behind the ears was not someone Mu Feng would pay attention to. But now, Mu Feng had already become a prisoner, and Xianpei had transformed from a useless prince to a man of distinction. He raised his head and saw that the youth on the throne had an extraordinary bearing. Not only did he not lose to the dragon robe he was wearing, but the dragon robe made him seem even more unfathomable. Today, he had been captured. There was no chance for him to soar in this life. Don't worry. We have only called you here today to ask you one thing. I heard you have a good relationship with Mu Jiaoyi. Xianpei asked. Mu Feng was surprised at first. Then, as if remembering something, he smiled. Oh, that woman. That woman is a bastard. I heard she later became His Highness's woman. I didn't think that His Highness would have a guest like her at such a young age. That's right, she is deeply in love with me. But our Mu family has never accepted a bastard. This kind of woman with a shady background is only a toy. Originally, I sent her to the palace because I thought highly of her, that's why I let her be a chess piece. I didn't think that this slut would collude with others. She really has the demeanor of her mother. Slut. He spat on the ground. This Mu Feng was a good man. Knowing that he could not escape death, he did not even beg for mercy. He thought that since the young emperor had an affair with Mu Shiro, it would be good for him to say such words to disgust him. So, he purposely said it in a vulgar manner. Of course, it was the truth. Xianpei didn't have any special expression on his face and was even smiling. Behind the screen, Mushiro's acupuncture point was sealed by Mingyue and she couldn't move. Her eyes were wide open and hot tears were dripping down her cheeks. Mingyu sighed in her heart. This woman was usually as cold as a block of ice. But at this moment, she showed such a heartbroken expression. She must be very hurt. After all, it was Mu Feng who supported her to live in such a cold place like the palace. But now, she knew that in Mu Feng's eyes, she was less than grass. All her support had collapsed overnight. Naturally, she could not bear it. Oh, so you took her as a slut. But she treated you very well. Xian Pei was puzzled. Why? I wanted to give her face and let you live. But now, it seems that you also disdained it. He clapped his hands. Mingyu unsealed Mushiro's acupuncture point. Mushiro quickly wiped away the tears on her face. Her hands were still trembling. She pinched her palm and her face became cold again. He walked out. Mu Feng was startled. Mingyu followed him out. Mushiro knew that Xian Pei did it on purpose. She did not understand what he meant. If she didn't know all of this, she would probably still be able to keep Mu Feng alive with the same beautiful hope as before. But now that she knew the truth, with her personality, she could only treat Mu Feng as her enemy. No woman would not hate a man who only wanted to use her, even if she loved him. She smiled coldly, like a blooming ice lotus, and said, "Then I really have to thank Big Brother for treating me so well." Mu Feng was startled. The moment he saw Mushiro, he was afraid. He had known for a long time that this woman had fallen in love with him, so he had taken advantage of her feelings for him. Mushiro's status in the Mu clan was low. As long as he treated her a little better, she would be dead set on him. Mu Feng had always been using her. Whether it was entering the palace or being favored by the emperor, he was just using her. A pawn. He never cared about her. Now that Mushiro appeared, her eyes seemed to be emotionless. But it made him feel strange and afraid. Mu Jiaoyi. Xian Pei smiled lazily. We promised you a wish. Now, say it. Will you let your brother go? Mu Feng was shocked. He did not believe that Xian Pei would be so kind to let him go. But in the past, Mushiro would protect him no matter what. But now, he felt uneasy. Your Majesty is benevolent, but this concubine cannot interfere with court affairs. I hope that your Majesty can grant this concubine a wish, said Mushiro. Speak. The Mu clan rebelled with the emperor. Their crimes should be unpardonable and their entire clan should be executed. However, this concubine knows that the Mu Dalong is extremely important to the Mu clan. Why not use him as bait and hang him at the gate and torture him to death? If the Mu clan comes to save him, we can capture them all. If not, we can kill the chicken to warn the monkey. As for the entire Mu clan, they are guilty of the most heinous crimes. They should be executed by 1,000 arrows and cut into pieces. Mushiro emphasized each word. Mu Feng took a deep breath. He didn't expect Mushiro to say something like this. He knew that the Mu clan didn't treat Mushiro well, but in the end, Mushiro still entered the palace for the Mu clan. Why would she say such cruel words? Hanging them at the gate, just the thought of it made him shudder. And she wanted to use this chance to capture the entire Mu clan. This woman was so cruel. Mu Jiaoyi is truly intelligent. No wonder father liked you the most back then. Xian Pei praised, I also think it is a good idea. I will go draft the decree and do as you say. Mu Feng felt a chill run down his spine. Sister, have you forgotten how I used to treat you? I was the one who protected you when you were bullied. Those were just words of anger, you won't be so heartless, will you? Sister. Mushiro looked at him coldly. There seemed to be tears in her eyes, but soon, there was only coldness left. Young Master Mu, I don't have a brother. I was born in a remote village. My parents are unknown. Who is your sister? Perhaps she is already dead. Take him away, shouted Xian Pei. Mu Feng was dragged away with a miserable scream. Silence returned to the hall. Mu Shiro knelt down again. Her expression was calm, but her palms were starting to bleed. She said, Your Majesty, please allow this concubine to become a nun and spend the rest of my life in the Buddhist temple. Xian Pei looked at her deeply, yes. Mu Shiro kowtowed and thanked him before leaving. After Mu Shiro left, Mingyu couldn't help but ask Xian Pei, Why did you do that, Your Majesty? Mu Shiro saw with her own eyes the face of her brother's lover that she was so proud of. Although she managed to keep her life, she lost the courage to continue living. Mingyu thought that Xian Pei treated Mu Shiro differently, which was why he took care of her. But now, it seemed that he was simply trying to wake Mu Shiro up and did not care about the consequences. Why? Why? Xianli said indifferently, she will understand eventually. Rather than prolong the pain, Mu Shiro's experience always reminded him of another person. That person did not have a good temper like Mu Shiro in this life. That person became a chess piece and paid the price with his life. Every time he saw Mu Shiro, it was as if he was seeing that person. Even if Xiang Yi's encounter had caught his attention, he wouldn't let something like that happen again. Some fools only need to do it once. Some people only need to make a mistake once. Chapter 258. This bitter summer in the Great Jin Dynasty was exceptionally long. Because of the effects of the war, it seemed to have turned into a scorching hot desert, devoid of life. Xian Li's men finally withdrew from the capital and reached the edge of the city gates. In the end, they were outnumbered. Xian Pei's subordinates were not lacking in military officers. The old general's household had Zhao Guang and his sons, the young and brave god of war, Jiang Xing, the civil officer Lin Wei, Lu Min, and Xiao Xiao's hundreds of thousands of embroidered guards. Xian Li's men retreated step by step. Among them, Jiang Xing and Xiao Xiao's embroidered guards were especially ferocious. They were as cruel and unreasonable as the autumn wind sweeping away fallen leaves. Sometimes, when faced with Xian Li's army, they were clearly evenly matched, and sometimes they were far inferior. In the end, it almost became a one-sided massacre. Xiao Xiao had always brought the habits of an assassin to the battlefield. In the eyes of the embroidered guards, the enemy could not be considered an enemy, they could only be prey. Thus, slaughter became an instinct. Everyone knew the reason why Jiang Xing and Xiao Xiao were so crazy. It was because Xian Li had kidnapped Jiang Ruan and caused her death. The reason why Xian Li was willing to make this decision was probably because he had Jiang Ruan in his hands. As long as the embroidered guards did not appear, Xian Pei's men could only fight him to a draw. Who would have thought that Yuan Chuan's final scheme would actually include him? Thus, he and Xiao Xiao became mortal enemies, and those who went against the embroidered uniform guard would find it a bit more difficult to walk the earth for no reason. In addition, with Xian Pei overseeing the court, everything was handled in an orderly manner. Even those officials who were unsure of their positions and had initially harbored wishful thoughts during the fight for the throne were all dealt with by Xian Pei. Xian Pei vigorously supported the loyal officials. Among them, there was no lack of confidants who had followed him from the start. He was clear in his rewards and punishments. Moreover, his settling of accounts after the autumn also made the officials realize that this young son of heaven was not someone who was easy to deal with. Every move of the court had long been seen by him, but he had previously restrained himself. However, no matter how fierce the war was, no matter how frequent the reports of victory were, whether it was the emperor, the general's household, Jiang Xing, or Xiao Xiao, there was no trace of joy on their faces. Especially Xiao Xiao, who did things coldly every day and ate icily. His temperament was even colder than before. It was as if nothing in the world could be reflected in his eyes. Still no news. Housekeeper Lin should be a new official of the imperial court. Lin Wei glanced at Xiao Xiao, who was standing in the pavilion in the courtyard, thinking about something. Qi Feng shook his head. These days, Xiao Xiao had never given up searching for Jiang Ruan's whereabouts. The embroidered uniform guards in every area had been notified, but even such a large-scale search yielded no results. Perhaps it meant something. Xiao Xiao was a calm and rational person. It was impossible for him not to know this, but he insisted that Jiang Ruan was not dead. At that time, the brocade guards had wanted to find some ashes from the temple that had been destroyed by fire to erect a cenotaph for Jiang Ruan. After Xiao Xiao had seen this, he had been unable to restrain his anger and had actually chopped the cenotaph into pieces. Afterwards, he had ruthlessly punished those brocade guards who had acted on their own. From then on, no one dared to mention Jiang Ruan's whereabouts in front of Xiao Xiao. Since Xiao Xiao insisted on this wish, what else could they do? It was just that he had to guard a hopeless hope by himself. It was probably a little sad for others to see it. Lin Wei also sighed and said, "Let's go." Just as he was about to leave, he saw Jin Er running out of nowhere. His expression was extremely agitated, holding something in his hands. He did not even care about his qinggong and hurriedly ran as he shouted, "Master, Master, there's news." Qi Feng and Lin Wei were startled at the same time and immediately walked towards the two of them. Xiao Xiao turned his head. Jin Er was so excited that he did not care about the etiquette between master and servant. As Qi Feng and Lin Wei approached, they heard Jin Er's voice, "Young master, someone found young madam's jewelry in a pawn shop in the south of the city." Jiang Ruan finished sewing the last stitch on her small gown. She used her mouth to bite off the end of the thread and skillfully tied a knot. She was very skilled in doing this, and Gue Sa could not help but praise her. She also said that she looked like a young lady of a wealthy family with delicate skin and flesh. Presumably, she had not done any rough work in her daily life. Who knew that this garment was so exquisitely sewn that it was even better than the tailors in the village? Jiang Ruan smiled. She had also lived in the rural residence for a long time. At that time, there was endless embroidery work to be done every day, so naturally, she had also practiced needlework. After returning to the minister's fu, she rarely touched needlework. However, now that she thought of the child in her belly, she was filled with joy. Doing needlework was also fun. From spring to summer, these few days, she rushed to make some small cool summer gowns. They were all made of cotton and were very comfortable to the touch. Gue Sa said, "However, although you have done well, Wan Yangzi should not do too much. You must know that the day of your labor is approaching, so you must not have any mishaps because of this. Rest well these few days, the weather is also hot. Leave these matters to me." She looked at Jiang Ruan's belly and reached out to touch it lovingly. "Look at this big belly, it must be a big fat boy." Jiang Ruan also lowered her head to look at her lower abdomen and reached out to touch it. It seemed that she could still feel the child kicking her. The days here were actually much more relaxed than in the outside world. Perhaps it was because this place was remote and isolated from the rest of the world, but the people here did not calculate how to live. In any case, it was very suitable for her to nurture her pregnancy here. At this moment, they heard a reproachful voice coming from outside, and it seemed that there was also the soft sobbing of a child. Jiang Ruan and Gue Sa were startled and looked at Dashan pulling Xiao Shan over. Xiao Shan's head was drooping and there were still beads of tears on his face. "What happened?" Gue Sa asked. "Dashan, did you bully Xiao Shan again?" "Mother, I did not bully Xiao Shan." Dashan's face was still full of anger. He looked at Xiao Shan and said, "You tell mother and Ruan Yangzi yourself, what did you do?" Gue Sa and Jiang Ruan looked at each other. This matter actually had something to do with Jiang Ruan. Jiang Ruan smiled slightly. "Dashan, don't be anxious. Xiao Shan is still young and insensible. You scare him so easily." "What happened to Xiao Shan?" "She had been staying at Gue Sa's house for the past few days. Dashan and his brother were her saviors, and they treated her very sincerely. In return for a plum, she should be grateful to them. It was just that she had no way of repaying them now. When Xiao Shan heard this, he burst into tears, which made Jiang Ruan feel even more puzzled. Dashan sighed and stood in front of Jiang Ruan with an ashamed expression. He bowed to Jiang Ruan and said, "I'm sorry, Ruan Nyangzi. This boy stole your jewelry and sold it." Gue Sa stood up with a tang sound, and the expression on her face changed as she looked at Xiao Shan. She said angrily, "Xiao Shan, what have I taught you on normal days? We don't steal, we don't rob, and we don't do anything sneaky. How can you be so useless? Are you worthy of your father?" As Gue Sa spoke, her eyes reddened with anger, and tears almost fell. She was so angry that she reached out to hit Xiao Shan. "Gue Sa, don't be angry." Jiang Ruan hurriedly comforted. She was pregnant, and it was not good for her to directly protect Xiao Shan. She said, "Xiao Shan definitely did not do it on purpose. Let's listen to what the child has to say first." Xiao Shan sobbed and said, "Qionghua's grandmother is sick, and she needs expensive medicine to prolong her life. Dr. Wang does not have that medicine, and it can only be found in the capital. Qionghua's family is poor, and they can't afford it. I saw that Ruan Yangzi's jewelry looked valuable, so I stole it and pawned it. But I am a pawn, and when I have money in the future, I will definitely redeem it for Ruan Yangzi." Jiang Ruan had lived here for a long time, so naturally, she had heard about Qionghua's family. In Qionghua's family, only she and her grandmother depended on each other. Qionghua's grandmother was now very old, and she had one foot in the grave. Qionghuo had probably complained to her friends. Xiao Shan had grown up with Qionghuo, but he did not have that much money. When Jiang Ruan came over, she brought some jewelry with her, but later, because she was pregnant, she took it off. Gue Sa was stunned. She probably did not expect that Xiao Shan would steal Jiang Ruan's jewelry for such a reason. This behavior was indeed unjustifiable, but it was also out of good intentions. She said angrily, "But you shouldn't have stolen Ruan Yangzi's jewelry." Xiao Shan cried and said, "Mother taught us to repay a drop of water with a gushing spring. After father passed away, the three of us had a hard time. Grandma Qionghuo helped us a lot. Now that she is in trouble, we can't just stand by and watch. But I don't have any money, and those ornaments are non-living things. I'm just borrowing them from Ruan Yangzi, and I'll definitely return them in the future." Jiang Ruan pondered for a moment before saying, "Xiao Shan, this place is very far from the outside world, and it's about a dozen li away from the capital. How did you get out?" There were still tears at the corner of Xiao Shan's eyes. "I walked out on my own. A few days ago, I said I was going to play with Butt-Face in the mountains. In fact, I was going to pawn something." Aunt Gue gasped. After all, Xiao Shan was still a child. Walking for a few days was tiring for him. Which mother did not care for her son? Especially Gue Sa, who was dependent on her two sons. Naturally, the resentment in her heart quickly dissipated. He looked at Xiao Shan and scolded, "What a fool. Why didn't you tell mother and big brother?" I was afraid that mother and big brother would not agree, but only Ruan Yangzi's ornaments can save Grandma Qionghuo." Jiang Ruan smiled and said, "It doesn't matter, Aunt Gue. Saving a life is better than building a 7-storied pagoda. Those ornaments are not worth much money. Moreover, I'm pregnant now, so it's not good for me to use them. They're all non-living things. It's better to exchange them for money to treat illnesses. My life was saved by Dashan and Xiao Shan, and Aunt Gue, you've given me a place to stay. You've been taking care of me for so long, and I have nothing to repay you for. I originally wanted to give those ornaments to you as compensation for these days. Xiao Shan is still a child. The important thing is that he's kind-hearted, and he didn't deliberately steal them. I think that Aunt Gue shouldn't blame him." Xiao Shan rubbed his eyes and looked at Jiang Wan without saying anything. On the other hand, Aunt Gui was a little embarrassed and quickly said, "How can we do that? Wan Yangzi, Deshan and the others should have saved you. What compensation are you talking about? Aren't you treating us like outsiders? We really can't accept these things. Later, let Xiao Shan tell me the amount of money, and we'll redeem them." Jiang Wan shook her head, "But they're just worldly possessions. They're not important, so there's no need to redeem them." On the other hand, Xiao Shan, did you encounter any danger when you went out? Did you meet anyone? She was worried about another matter. Previously, she was afraid that Yuan Chuan's people were still lingering outside, so she didn't dare to go out and show her face. She didn't want to fall into the tiger's mouth again. Would Xiao Shan be discovered taking her ornaments out? Xiao Shan shook his head, "No." Jiang Wan thought for a moment, then, "Has anything happened in the capital recently?" Xiao Shan thought for a moment, "There's a war in the capital, and there are people everywhere." They were in the depths of a secluded place, so they weren't very clear about the fight for the throne in the imperial court. Naturally, they didn't know Xian Li's name. When Aunt Gui heard this, she became anxious. "There's a war, and you still ran out. Don't you think about what would happen to me and your eldest brother if something happened? Are you hurt?" Just a moment ago, she had looked like she wanted to eat someone up, but now, she couldn't help but worry about the safety of her child. The more Aunt Gui thought about it, the more uneasy she felt. She pulled Xiao Shan's ear and walked into the house. "No, I have to take a look." She instructed Deshan, "Look after Wan Yangzi, don't let her carry anything heavy." After Aunt Gui and Xiao Shan left, only Deshan and Jiang Wan were left. Deshan looked at Jiang Wan helplessly, but finally, he gathered his courage and said, "I'm sorry, Wan Yangzi, I didn't teach Xiao Shan well." Jiang Wan returned to her senses and smiled. "What's the matter? Xiao Shan didn't do it on purpose. Moreover, it was all for the sake of saving people. Deshan, you don't have to take it to heart." As she said this, she recalled what Xiao Shan had said about the situation in the capital. Xiao Shan said that there was a war in the capital, but he didn't say what the situation was. She didn't know how Xiao was doing now. What about Xian Pei and eldest brother? Deshan also guessed that Jiang Wan was distracted because of Xiao Shan's words. However, Deshan thought that Jiang Wan was thinking about her husband, the cruel husband who abused her, lied to her, and wanted her life. In Deshan's eyes, Jiang Ruan's temperament was gentle and kind. She must have felt sorry for her husband. In his heart, Big Mountain felt a little indignant for Jiang Ruan. He thought that Jiang Wan deserved someone better, so he said, "Wan Yangzi, actually, you don't have to think about the past. You should look forward." After he gathered his courage to say these words, his face immediately turned red. Jiang Wan looked at him with some astonishment. She could naturally see the affection this youth had for her. These days, he had taken great care of her, and Jiang Wan had politely kept a distance from him. However, this child was probably also a one-track mind. Moreover, he had lived in such a simple and honest environment, so his single-mindedness had never changed. Deshan looked at Jiang Ruan's bright face and said, "Wan Yangzi can actually stay. Xiao Shan also likes you very much. As for the child in Wan Yangzi's womb, I can also help take care of it. I can teach it archery." This kind of implicit confession was almost the limit of what Deshan could say. This was the first time he said such words to a woman. For him, it didn't matter that Jiang Wan was married before, and it also didn't matter that she had his own child. He wanted to sincerely take care of this woman. Jiang Wan was also momentarily stunned. If she was in the outside world, with her identity, she would definitely be a mistress. No matter how pitiful her background was, there would not be a man from a good family who would be willing to marry her. But here, it was different. Deshan was so young, he could have found a better girl, but he still confessed his feelings to her. Jiang Wan looked at the youth in front of her. He was full of vitality, like a sun that had not been contaminated by the outside world. She smiled and said, "Thank you, but Deshawn, I can also take care of him myself." Her tone was calm, without the slightest fluctuation. Obviously, her state of mind had not changed in the slightest because of Deshawn's words. She was not moved. Deshawn looked at her disappointedly and asked unwillingly, "Is it because Wan Yangzi still can't forget him?" Jiang Wan smiled faintly and was about to reply when she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her lower abdomen. She couldn't help but stretch out a hand to cover her abdomen, but the pain only grew stronger and stronger. She couldn't help but let out a moan and leaned against a pillar at the side to bend down. Wan Yangzi. Deshawn was stunned at first, but when he saw Jiang Ruan's uncomfortable appearance, he also panicked. He hurriedly walked over, and without caring about the etiquette between men and women, he supported Jiang Wan and said, "Wan Yangzi, what's wrong?" "It hurts." Jiang Wan frowned, and in an instant, her face was as pale as paper. Deshawn saw that the situation was not right and hurriedly shouted, "Mother! Mother, Wan Yangzi is not good." Gue Sa was in the room scolding Xiao Shan. When she heard Deshawn's words, she hurriedly ran out. When she saw Jiang Ruan's appearance, she was also shocked and hurriedly said, "What's the matter?" As she spoke, she came to support Jiang Ruan. When she saw Jiang Ruan's expression, she was also shocked and immediately said, "Not good, I'm afraid she's about to give birth." She hurriedly said, "Deshawn, go to the village and call Matron Yu over. Tell her that Wan Yangzi is about to give birth. I will take her back to the room first." Deshawn complied and went out the door. Gue Sa carefully supported Jiang Wan to the bed in the room. At this moment, Jiang Wan was in so much pain that her forehead began to sweat, but she clenched her teeth to prevent herself from crying out. Gue Sa's heart ached when she saw this, and she said, "Wan Yangzi, you must not hold on. It's just that the child has just started to move, and we don't know when it will start to give birth. Don't use up all your strength now. I will immediately ask someone to cook some brown sugar eggs. In any case, Wan Yangzi should eat some to regain her strength. Later, the child will be born smoothly." In both her previous and current life, this was the first time Jiang Ruan had given birth. No matter how calm and composed she was usually, there was not a trace of fear in her heart. However, she had always been rational and calm, so she obediently nodded to Gue Sa and said, "Okay." Gue Sa hurriedly went to ask the young wife next door to help cook the eggs. She personally sat by the bed to accompany Jiang Ruan. She held Jiang Ruan's hand and comforted her not to be afraid. Jiang Wan was a little absent-minded from the pain, and unconsciously called out Xiao Xiao's name, "Xiao." At this moment, Xiao Xiao, who was rushing over from outside the capital, was whipping his horse at lightning speed. For some reason, his expression suddenly froze. Jiang Xing, who was following closely behind him, saw it and asked, "What's the matter?" Xiao Xiao pursed his lips and shook his head, "Nothing." Chapter 259. Ah! Jiang Wan clenched the bedsheets under her. Wang Matron said, "Wan Yangzi, don't be nervous, relax. This is how women give birth. Don't be afraid, come, use some strength, don't worry." Xiao Xiao's tone was a little aggrieved, "You only care about the child." "Wan Yangzi's husband?" Big Mountain asked. Jiang Ruan's body recovered faster than expected. Because this place was good for rest, she stayed for many more days. It was not until a month later that she was ready to leave. On the day of her departure, Jiang Ruan said to Gue Sa, Big Mountain, and Xiao Shan, "I lied to you at that time. I have no other choice. I am sorry. Jiang Wan is very grateful for your shelter these days. Qi Feng spared no effort to explain the relationship between Jiang Ruan and Xiao Xiao to the people of Qingping village. At that time, he felt that the villagers' attitude towards them was very strange. Later, he finally understood that Jiang Ruan had lied. In fact, Qi Feng also wondered why Jiang Ruan said this. He was afraid that Xiao Xiao would feel if he heard it. Initially, the villagers were skeptical of them. However, after Gue Sa came out, she told the villagers about Xiao Xiao's behavior in the house that day. Many of the young daughters-in-law were very touched by what she had heard. Later on, when they saw Xiao Xiao taking care of Jiang Ruan in every way, no matter how big or small, their suspicions disappeared. As they were talking, they heard a plop on a small bed. The two looked at it at the same time. The two siblings had woken up. Xiao Mingxing stared coldly at Xiao Xiao. Xiao Xiao stared back and saw Nanqiu suddenly grinning and saying sweetly, "Father." The young men around them laughed. It was not clear whether they were laughing at Big Mountain's insensitivity or at Lu Mengmeng's display of goodwill being wasted. Lu Mengmeng stomped her feet angrily, turned around, and ran away. Big Mountain was very puzzled, but Gue Sa saw it and could not help but sigh. "You gave birth to him?" Xiao Xiao asked. At night, after coaxing the child to sleep, she saw Xiao Xiao return. Jiang Ruan got up and before she could speak, Xiao Xiao pressed her against the wall and kissed her. At this time, a clear voice was heard, "Not good, not good. If you need me in the future, don't hesitate to ask." Xiao Xiao said. "You really hate me," Xian Li said again. So in the end, the identity of the princess of Nanjiang country was gone, and Nanjiang country was gone. Her life was buried in a strange place. She wasted her flower-like years. The man she loved didn't even look at her until he died, let alone care about her. Although the woman she hated had died early, she still had that man's love. She lost at the beginning. What kind of person is this? Qi Feng felt very wronged. Save our child. Jiang Ruan said, "Please save him." Seeing Xiao Xiao, Jiang Ruan's entire heart was at ease. Her only thought was to protect the child in her womb. She felt that all the strength and life in her body were slipping away. As long as Xiao Xiao could protect her child, this was her and Xiao Xiao's child, she did not want to lose it. In the midst of the rolling hills, there was a young girl carrying a basket. No one knew what she was doing. In this lush and verdant forest, this young girl was wearing a peach-colored summer gown. She looked particularly eye-catching, and the few of them noticed her at a glance. Brocade 1, bait? So old? Jiang Ruan laughed and scolded, "How old is he? How dare you say such things? The child still can't speak. I heard that this age is the easiest time to learn to speak. I still want to hear the child call mother." But when he saw that Qi Man was about to make a move on Jiang Ruan's child, he suddenly thought of the last scene he saw Jiang Ruan in his dream. She was kneeling on the 9 high steps, her hair disheveled, her beautiful face full of despair, and the child in her arms was foolishly staring blankly. That was Xian Pei. She protected the child very tightly. Even when she was at the end of her rope, she would not leave her own child alone. I came late. Xiao Xiao half knelt in front of the bed in 2 or 3 steps and held her hand tightly. "I'm sorry." "Yes." Lu Mengmeng gestured. "He's tall and very good-looking. He's wearing black clothes." "Ah!" Lu Mengmeng screamed and pointed at a person in the night. "Why are you here?" Jiang Ruan's eyes also reddened. She could not bear to part with Xiao Xiao. Perhaps people would only discover how precious everything they had now was after they had taken the wrong path once. In this life, Xiao Xiao was her most unexpected gift. How lucky she was to have met him. If she died, Xiao Xiao would live alone in this world. He would probably be in great pain. Jiang Ruan closed her eyes and clenched her fists again. "It hurts." Jiang Ruan's forehead was covered with sweat. Strands of hair were wet, her face was deathly pale, and her lips were still trembling. Another person pulled Gui Sa to one side and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, "This won't do. Ruan Yangzi's pregnancy is very dangerous. The child's head is too big and can't come out. Her body is weak, and at this moment, she can't exert any strength." Deshan threw down the firewood in his hands and ran out. For the whole day, he had been very anxious. No one knew when Jiang Ruan would give birth. Deshan had heard others say that when a woman gave birth, it was a trip to the gates of hell. Wang Matron said that Jiang Ruan's body was weak, so it was even more dangerous. She was very afraid that an accident would happen. Deshan's heart was also anxious and fearful. Immediately after, the emperor conferred Jinying Wangfei the title of a first-rank lady of imperial mandate and gave the Jinying Wangfu a hereditary title of nobility. At such a young age, Xiao Mingsheng and Xiao Nanxiu had gained a status that no one in the great Jin court dared to touch. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were even more powerful than the descendants of the imperial family. He saw the wet nurse lying on the ground, Qi Man standing on the other side, and the person lying on the ground was unexpectedly Xianli. Because Xianli was a rebel and the murderer of the late emperor, he did not have the qualifications to enter the imperial tomb. The emperor was benevolent and allowed him to be buried. However, when he was buried, he invited the celestial master. Some people guessed that the young emperor did this to seal Xian Li's soul and prevent him from reincarnating. Some people thought that this was too cruel. After all, they were born from the same root, so why torment each other so quickly? Some people thought that this was a good move. After all, Xian Li's act of killing his father and rebelling was really heinous. Deshan and the villagers were surrounded by the genie guards and could not approach. However, they heard Wang Momo's surprised voice from inside, "It's a pair of twins. Ruan Yangzi is really lucky." Qi Man smiled again. After so many years, she had used a medicinal liquid to completely change her appearance. She had long since become an ordinary and unremarkable face. How could there still be any trace of the glamorous princess that she had originally been? But even so, the elegant demeanor of the princess of the southern frontier remained in her bones. At this moment, every frown and every smile seemed to have returned to those bright and unrestrained times. It was almost somewhat seductive. She said, "Why? I just feel that this kind of life is a little boring. I hate people who are infatuated with love. What's so good about being infatuated? Since that woman is so obstinate, I might as well make her pay with her life. Isn't that fun? So what if she's the main wife? In the end, won't she still end up withering away?" Jiang Ruan also laughed. "Nanxiu has a good temper. Hypocritical ungrateful wretch, get lost." Xiao Shan rushed over with the shoulder pole. Jiang Xing's hand lightly hooked, and the shoulder pole was blocked to the side. He asked doubtfully, "What do you mean?" For no reason, how did they become ungrateful wretches? Looking at the situation, the people in the village were really dissatisfied with them. This time, a young man dressed in black walked out from behind the valiant man. This young man's appearance was very good, even better than the two men in front. His eyes were like dots, and his eyebrows were like an ink painting. For a moment, Lu Mengmeng only thought of the words that her father had taught her. This young man also had an icy temperament that made people fascinated. His words were also indifferent. "I received a clue that my wife has wandered to Qingping village, so I came to look for her. Young lady is from Qingping village. Is there an unfamiliar woman from the village who has wandered here?" Young lady. Seeing that she did not speak for a long time, Qi Feng could not help but ask. He thought that he had frightened this young lady. Little did he know that Lu Mengmeng was staring at the young man in black. She had never seen such a good-looking man. Moreover, there was a kind of natural elegance in his bones. No matter how she looked at him, she could not get enough. Such a person was unexpectedly a heartless person who seized other people's property, and in the end, chased after his wife. Lu Mengmeng's heart was filled with emotion. She thought that even she would not be able to recognize this young man's ambition at a glance. The mother and child venomous insects began to act up at the same time. Chi Man's eyes were wide open, as if she was about to cry. However, her eyes were dry and there was not a single tear to be shed. She had concealed her identity in the capital for so many years, all for the sake of revenge. At that time, Crown Prince Hongxi not only humiliated her, but also caused her to become the main culprit of the country's destruction. She wanted to get back the dignity and land that she had lost, but from the first day she worked with Xianli, she knew that this ally was not at all trustworthy. She looked coldly at Xianli on the ground. Did he know about the events of her previous life? Then what did he mean now? Was he doing this out of guilt? Wasn't he a little too full of himself? Not everything could be so easily forgiven. Xiao Xiao, I am not as good as you, he said. The people from the General Fu arrived early. Zhao Guang and Madame Li loved the two children to the core, and so did the other grandmothers of the Zhao family. Immediately, each gift was more precious than the last. Zhao Guang laughed heartily. He could tell at a glance that Ming Sheng was good material for practicing martial arts, and he would definitely nurture him well in the future. Don't move. Xiao Xiao frowned and stopped her. He picked up the children for her to see. His movements were still very clumsy, and the way he carried them was also not right. Fortunately, the two children were not delicate and did not cry. It was just that the newborn child was wrinkled, and his little face was scrunched up into a ball. Xiao Xiao was stunned for a moment when he saw it. He clicked his tongue and said, "So ugly." As time went by, the moaning in the house gradually weakened. Even Xiao Shan, who had always been naughty, could not help but put on a serious expression. He asked Deshan softly, "Brother, will she be all right?" Xianli had followed Qi Man here. He knew that Qi Man wanted to kill Jiang Ruan's two children, and he also wanted to snatch Jiang Ruan back. Now, he knew that he had lost his chance to make a comeback. Xian Pei had tightly held on to this opportunity. What did he have left? He had nothing left, but he was Xianli. The people of Nanjiang were the best at using poison. Everyone hurriedly covered their mouths and noses. Xiao Xiao suddenly stood in front of Jiang Ruan and pressed her and the children's heads into his arms. When the smoke dissipated, there was no trace of Qi Man on the ground. Qi Feng was speechless. Xiao Xiao had already walked away with his daughter in his arms. As he walked, he admonished, "In the future, don't get close to people casually, there are many bad people." In the end, they settled down. Xiao Xiao stayed by Jiang Ruan's side, and the children were also by her side. It was a happy and harmonious family. Deshan, who had followed Jiang Xinji to the door of the house, saw this and stopped in his tracks. He was not a fool. When had he ever seen Jiang Ruan with such a happy and relaxed expression? This kind of unguarded, heartfelt happiness must be because of that man. Early in the morning the next day, Jiang Ruan carried Xiao Mingsheng and Xiao Nanqiu out. Housekeeper Lin had now entered the court, and his status as a court official and housekeeper was incomparably natural. He was even more protective of the two little treasures that had been added to the fu. He watched them even more closely than Xiao Xiao, their father. He personally asked the people of Nan Feng Yuan to make 2 sets of clothes, one pink and one blue. She did not know if it was intentional, but the pink one was given to Mingsheng and the blue one to Nanqiu. Nanqiu had always been very well behaved and cheerful no matter what he wore. Mingsheng, on the other hand, had a straight face. He wore a pink dress and looked like he was carved from jade. Jiang Wan held her chin and felt as if she was looking at a face that looked exactly like Xiao Xiao's. At this moment, the little person was very unhappy. Lu Mengmeng had also heard of Jiang Ruan's story. She knew that Jiang Yuan had married an extraordinary person. At first, she felt indignant for Jiang Yuan. In fact, any woman who married such a man would be miserable. Although Lu Mengmeng was jealous of De Shan's good treatment of Jiang Yuan, when she saw the man in front of her, she immediately thought that he must not discover any traces of Jiang Yuan. Xiao Xiao's expression softened and he said, Mingsheng, Nanxiu. Jealousy, Lu Mengmeng was jealous of Jiang Yuan. What she was most jealous of was that De Shan was so good to Jiang Yuan. She had never seen De Shan so considerate towards other women. Lu Mengmeng could see that De Shan liked Jiang Yuan. But why? Jiang Yuan was a woman who had a husband. The more she thought about it, the more upset she became. Especially last night, when she saw De Shan sitting there motionlessly. His eyes were filled with Jiang Yuan, who was about to give birth. His eyes could not tolerate anyone else. Just thinking about it made Lu Mengmeng feel wronged. Early in the morning, she had come to the mountains to dig up medicinal herbs. She stubbornly thought, if she was unlucky enough to meet a wild beast in the mountains, would De Shan come to save her? If she was injured, would De Shan also watch over her like he was watching over Jiang Yuan? De Shan, Lu Mengmeng walked to his side and took out a paper bag from her bosom and handed it to him. I brought this camellia cake from home. You have been sitting here for half the night, eat something. Lu Mengmeng was the daughter of Master Lu in the village. This year, she was only 14 or 15 years old. Master Lu was the most knowledgeable person in the village. Naturally, Lu Mengmeng was also the most talented girl in the village. She was also beautiful and lovely. Before Jiang Yuan came, she was the most beautiful girl in the village. However, after Jiang Yuan came, the young men in the village who liked to flatter her turned to Jiang Yuan. Naturally, Lu Mengmeng held back her anger. Qi Feng frowned. He always felt that the villagers in the village were very hostile towards them. Although he did not know why, he still said, Everyone, we are not bad people. We are just looking for the madam of your Fu. After we find her, we will leave immediately. We will not disturb you, nor will we reveal the news here. When Xiao Xiao came to see him, Ming Sheng liked to ignore him. Nan Su stretched out his hand for his father to hug him, and Xiao Xiao hugged him naturally. Ming Sheng continued to stare, then turned his head to look at Jiang Yuan. Jiang Yuan understood his meaning and lifted Ming Sheng up. Ming Sheng's soft, milky lips landed on Jiang Yuan's lips. Xiao Xiao turned his head to look at Ming Sheng indifferently. Ming Sheng shrunk his head back and nonchalantly turned his head away, pretending not to see his own father's expression. The surrounding villagers suddenly shouted and all surrounded them. Qi Feng was very distressed. This matter did not have to be so angry, it could also be resolved peacefully. How did it become like this? Xiao Xiao did not look at the group of people and immediately rushed into the house. Jiang Yuan was already too weak to make a sound, but at this moment, she seemed to vaguely hear Xiao Xiao's voice. Her originally somewhat unconscious mind suddenly became clear again. She said, Xiao, you're talking nonsense. Qi Man immediately scolded as if Jiang Yuan had poked at her sore spot. It seemed that she still wanted to get up and hurt Jiang Yuan. Jin Air moved in a flash and restrained her movements. Qi Man almost fell. She held on to the table at the side and smiled coldly. What do you know? You have his doting, you live a high and mighty life. You don't need to think about anything, you only need to crook your finger and countless people will go through water and tread on fire for you. You have never struggled alone, you have never felt the feeling of not being able to love someone, you have never experienced anything. What right do you have to say that about me? Jiang Yuan was also born beautiful. Even she had to admit that Jiang Yuan's beauty was like the sun in the sky. She was too gorgeous and bright, causing the people around her to appear dim. Moreover, her temperament was also good. Each and every one of her movements seemed to be graceful and elegant, as if she had come from a noble family. Most importantly, she was also very knowledgeable. Sometimes, she would even tell the children in the village things that Lu Mengmeng did not know. Even her own father had praised Ruan Nyangzi as a woman with profound knowledge. Jiang Ruan was coaxing the children in the house. The elder brother was Ming Sheng and the younger sister was Nan Su. The two siblings, Xiao Mingsheng and Xiao Nan Su, had finally shed the wrinkled appearance of a monkey when they were just born and had become as cute as jade. However, the elder brother looked as bright and beautiful as Jiang Ruan. His eyes were very moving, but his temperament was exactly the same as Xiao Xiao's. No matter how cute he was, he did not like to smile. His small body had a reserved appearance. The younger sister looked more like Xiao Xiao, but she had a sweet temperament. She liked to stretch out her hands to hug anyone she saw. Xiao Xiao liked his daughter more and hugged her every day. He was not very warm towards his bad-tempered son. Jiang Ruan was most used to seeing the father and son, one big and one small, sitting on the bed and staring at each other. Every time, Xiao Xiao would make her laugh out of anger. "What about the children?" Jiang Ruan said, "I'm afraid it will be inconvenient to bring them along." It was not easy to find such a clue. If it was false, who knew how sad Xiao Xiao would be? Everyone believed this, but how could they believe the words of this little girl? Seeing this, Jiang Xing said to her, "I am her big brother. We have been looking for her for a long time. Miss, please don't hide anything. If anything happens to her, I will never forgive myself for the rest of my life." Jiang Ruan took a step back and Xiao Xiao protected her behind him. The dagger in his hand had already flashed. Qi Feng looked at Xianli in surprise. What did Xianli mean by this? Although he had heard from others that Xianli seemed to have designs on Jiang Ruan in the past, such an intimate form of address was a bit strange. The young lads around them turned their heads to look at her. Lu Mengmeng was stared at until her face turned red. Everyone in the village knew that Lu Mengmeng was especially good to Deshan. Once, when Lu Mengmeng was digging for herbs with her little sister in the mountains, they met a leopard. Deshan met it while hunting and saved her life. Little girls always worshipped heroes. Deshan was also a handsome boy, so he naturally won Lu Mengmeng's favor. However, Lu Mengmeng was also hot-headed with the burden of shaving her head, so Deshan did not seem to care about this. The autumn wind whistled. On the south side of the street, the trees were covered with spring catkins. The name is very nice. It turns out that you have already thought about it. Jiang Ruan said, "Why are you so awkward? Even if you have thought about it, you won't say it." "But who is the elder brother's name and who is the younger sister's name?" She withdrew her gaze from Xiao Xiao and pretended to be ignorant. "I am not from Qingping village. There are several villages in this mountain. It is also my first time coming to the mountains to play. I don't know where Qingping village is. Recently, I have not heard of any women wandering here. I am afraid that you brothers have heard wrongly." On the other side, Xiao Xiao was rushing over with his trusted aides. After a day and a night, several of his subordinates had died from exhaustion, but they didn't complain about being tired or bitter. That was because Xiao Xiao was determined not to rest. Jiang Xing was the same. Qi Feng wanted to say a few words of advice, but he could understand the feelings of the two people. Moreover, finding news of Jiang Ruan was naturally better. It was just that tonight was different from last night. Last night, Jiang Ruan's abdominal pain was bearable, and it finally settled down. Tonight, the sounds coming from the room were very mournful. From time to time, women could be seen bringing out basins of bloody water, which made people's hearts palpitate. The cries of the pregnant woman in the room also made everyone clench their fists. After Jiang Ruan left the mountain, she took a carriage back to the capital. In the carriage, Jiang Ruan held the child and leaned on Xiao Xiao. Xiao Xiao's expression was still not good, so he said, "When did you become so stingy?" Gue Sa asked the young wife next door to boil brown sugar eggs and quickly served them. However, Jiang Wan was in so much pain that she was not in the mood to eat. Gue Sa could not stand Gue Sa's repeated persuasions. Wan Yangzi should eat a little. We have all given birth to children and know how serious it is. Giving birth is a strenuous work. If Wan Yangzi does not eat when she gives birth, how will she have the strength? At this time, we do not know when she will give birth. I think it will be in the next few days. Wan Yangzi will not be hungry for a few days. Don't starve the child in your stomach. Wait, Jiang Xing suddenly stretched out his hand and said, "Look, who is that?" Before he finished speaking, he heard a high-pitched moan from the lit room, but he also knew that it was indeed not a dream. She once belonged to him, and then she left. He did not know what he was doing. He said, "I loved you. How old are you to argue with a child?" Jiang Wan was amused and pushed him. "Tomorrow is the full moon banquet, you should also prepare well." "Nothing will happen," Deshan murmured. It was not clear whether these words were for Xiao Shan or to comfort himself. "I see that Wan Yangzi's body is still somewhat weak," Wang Matron said. "I am afraid that this time, it will not be so easy to give birth." Wang Matron quickly ran in with two aunties who had experience in delivering babies. A large pot of hot water had already been boiled outside, and Gue Sa had already chased Deshan out of the room. So this time, it was the same scene as last night. Many young men and young wives and aunties were waiting outside Gue Sa's room, anxiously listening to the movements coming from inside. She smiled slightly. "Thank you, Eighth Highness, for your help just now." Xianli was cunning and suspicious, and the two of them were just using each other. Although Nanjiang country had recovered some of its power, it was still somewhat difficult to contend with the great Jin dynasty. Even though she knew that it was impossible, she still persisted. It was because if she did not persist in the belief of revenge, she did not know whether she would still be able to live. Xiao Xiao was holding a child in each hand. Jiang Wan quickly walked up, not caring about anything else. Ming Sheng and Nan Su were not seriously injured. Nan Su blinked her eyes and looked at her, as if she did not understand what had happened. On the other hand, Lin Zixiang looked at Jiang Wan and said, "This brother is born the same as you, but why is his expression so lifelike as if it was the result of your husband's slap? So young and already so arrogant, what will he become in the future?" Looking at the two of them acting like a married couple, Deshan's heart flashed a trace of sourness. He knew how much he liked Jiang Wan, but he could also see that Jiang Wan and Xiao Xiao were very close, and there was no room for outsiders to intervene. Moreover, what qualifications did he have to compete? But even so, the youth could not help but say, "In the future, if you have any difficulties, you can come here to live." Xiao Xiao did not answer. Jiang Wan smiled and moved the child closer to Xiao Xiao. "You have not said what to name him. How is this possible?" Jin Er said, "This clue is clearly correct." He said, "Little sister, you are not deceiving us, we are not bad people." Because Jiang Ruan's body had not fully recovered, she probably needed to rest for a period of time. Xian Pei was busy with matters in the palace and could not leave the palace to see her. The two of them had not seen each other for a long time. However, Jiang Ruan's return still set off quite a storm among the common people of the capital. Everyone knew that Jiang Wan had escaped after being kidnapped, and had been rescued by a kind-hearted person. Not only had she managed to preserve her life, but she had also managed to hold on to a pair of flesh and blood in her belly. One after another, they all said that Jiang Wan had good fortune and a good life, and that good people would be rewarded. The Jining Wang Fu, which had originally been burdened with rebels and traitors, had also changed among the common people because of the resistance against the rebels. She was bored to death thinking about these things, and was not in the mood to pick medicinal herbs. Just as she was thinking, she suddenly heard someone call her from behind, "This young lady." The "you" was naturally referring to Jiang Ruan. Xiao Xiao's face immediately darkened, and he only said, "She won't." Then he said, "Goodbye." He turned around and pulled Jiang Yuan away. Jiang Yuan glared at him and hurriedly said goodbye to Deshan and Gui Sa before following Xiao Xiao's people. After waiting for a long time, Deshan was still looking in the direction of their departure. Gui Sa sighed, thinking that this silly son of hers would have to be sad for a period of time. Naturally, this was not only because of this matter, but also because of Xian Li's rebellion and the crushing defeat of the army. Jiang Ruan's heart relaxed, and she found it somewhat funny, but also somewhat touched. She knew that this time, she had probably scared Xiao Xiao, and so she scolded, childish. Either that was just an insignificant dream, or the woman in the dream had long died, and the woman in front of him was just another person. He suddenly laughed at himself, and did not know what he was laughing about, but as he laughed, tears fell. The winner was king, and the loser was in the wrong. This round, he had lost. And even until his death, he did not know how he had lost. Perhaps that dream could have given him some inspiration, but he was not willing to believe that dream. He was not a good person, and he would not feel guilty because of this. Why did his heart ache? It was because he had discovered that during those days when he had used her, he had unknowingly given some of his heart. This heart seemed insignificant to him, but it tormented him in the nightmares of the day after tomorrow. By the time he discovered this heart, she was already gone. In this world, there would no longer be a person who loved him wholeheartedly. She really is a cunning little girl. Qi Feng said, but why did she lie to us? On the side, Gui Sa and the others could not help but have their eyes redden. Wang Matron's eyes were sharp, and with one look, she could see that Jiang Yuan was different. She quickly said in a loud voice, Wan Yangzi, not bad, just like this, use your strength. She helped Jiang Yuan with one hand, and encouraged her. Xiao Xiao also held Jiang Yuan's hand tightly, and kept encouraging her. Everyone turned to look, and who else could it be but Lu Mengmeng? Auntie Lu scolded, stupid girl, where did you go crazy? Why did you come back so late? The night seemed to pass by exceptionally long. When the eastern sky was bright, the first cry of a baby resounded through the sky, and everyone inside and outside the house breathed a sigh of relief. I'm sorry, Xiao Xiao said in a low voice, it must have been very hard for you to be alone for so long. I came too late, almost. Almost, he had lost her. Xiao Xiao's hand stroked Jiang Ruan's hair. If he had lost Jiang Yuan, he did not dare to think about it. The news that Jiang Yuan had safely returned to the capital spread throughout the capital on the same day. Jiang Yuan was also once Hong and Junju, and could now be considered as the emperor's sister. Naturally, the little young master and little miss of Jining Wang Fu that she had given birth to were in high demand. When Jiang Yuan returned to Jining Wang Fu, Zhao Guang's family, Zhao Jin's family, Wen Fei Fei and the others, Jiang Xing, as long as they had a bit of friendship, almost everyone came. This was a major event, and everyone who came would praise the pair of dragon and phoenix fetuses. Housekeeper Lin was naturally grinning from ear to ear. Lu Zhu and Lian Qiao were also relieved, and were very happy every day. I won't bring them. Xiao Xiao hugged her tighter, and said in a low voice, they are already so big, just the two of us will be fine in the Fu. After walking for a while, Lu Mengmeng could not help but look back. When she did not see the black-clothed youth and his entourage, she heaved a sigh of relief. Indeed, as her father had said, the outside world was too complicated. Even she had not thought that the black-clothed youth, who was as handsome as a painting, was actually such a cruel and unscrupulous person. Thinking that this person had still wanted to find this place to ruthlessly kill Jiang Yuan, she could not help but sympathize with Jiang Yuan. Xianli, you don't need to say anything. What you owe me, I've already repaid myself. Your empire, your plans, your great cause, they've all been destroyed. Now, I only want your life, and the feelings between you and me are already gone. In the future, when we meet on the road to the underworld, we will be passers-by, and we will no longer have any connection. Although she spoke resolutely, she still clearly stated that she wanted Xian Li's life. There is no need, she has been poisoned. This child is here, which is equivalent to controlling her. Xia Qing glanced at the person on the ground. In the room, the infant in the swaddling clothes had been wiped clean and was wrapped up in the swaddling clothes that had long been made. They were the older brother and younger sister, and they were placed beside Jiang Ruan. Jiang Ruan's body was still very weak, and Xiao Xiao had been holding her hand. Jiang Ruan smiled and said, "I want to see the child." "What for?" Jiang Ruan turned her head, and Xiao Xiao rubbed her neck. This person was becoming more and more clingy, especially when he was competing with Ming Sheng. The two father and son were fighting openly and secretly at home. Jiang Ruan had to appease the older one, and she also had to appease the younger one, which gave her a headache. The ministers who had followed the young emperor also had new prospects, especially the young upstarts of the court, such as Lu Min and Mo Tsong, who had become the cornerstone of the new generation. As for Lin Wei, after assisting the emperor to ascend the throne, he gradually retired and only said that he wanted to go back to be a housekeeper. Everyone only thought that he was playing the same trick from many years ago, and they were too lazy to care. The people who followed Xian Li were also not a group of die-hard loyalists, and from time to time, there were also people who turned their heads and defected. Xian Li's power was getting weaker and weaker, but Xiao Xiao and Jiang Xing's people were very fierce because of their relationship with Jiang Ruan. In this way, it was only a matter of time before Xian Li's people were wiped out in one fell swoop. When they reached the edge of the cliff, there was no way to go, but when they heard that they had to go down the cliff, there were only vines outside. The subordinates followed Xiao Xiao and dismounted, leaving a few people to guard the place. Xiao Xiao and Jiang Xing opened the way. The two of them were highly skilled in martial arts, so they took the lead to go down. Soon, Qi Feng and the others also followed. When they landed, they found that it was a cluster of mountains, and they couldn't tell where they were at all, as it stretched on endlessly. Qi Feng sighed, "No wonder others can't find it. To find a village in such a hidden place, I'm afraid that no one will lead the way, and they will only get lost and die." Ruan, I didn't mean to. He wanted to say something, he wanted to say that he didn't mean to use her, but when the words came out, he suddenly found himself at a loss for words. From the dream to the outside, every time he saw Jiang Ruan, his mind was to use her. To use her to obtain fame and fortune, to obtain the position of being unparalleled in the world. But when he finally obtained it, he found that everything was not as good as he had imagined. He regretted it, and he could only swallow the bitter fruit into his stomach. Wang Matron's voice also sounded anxiously, "Wan Nyangzi can't go on, she has no strength, what should we do?" All the guards were on guard against Qi Man's sudden attack, but they saw that Qi Man had already lost her mind, and at this moment, she seemed to have lost her ability, just like a crazy woman. "A place of refuge, she certainly doesn't want to be discovered," Jiang Xing said. What he said was reasonable, so no one said anything more and continued to follow Lu Mengmeng. In that dream, it was a completely different life. He obtained everything, obtained the throne, and was high and mighty, but that position was at the cost of sacrificing a person. In that dream, Jiang Ruan was gentle and beautiful, smiled very sweetly, loved him wholeheartedly, and then was used by him until there was no longer a drop of value left. These two children were treasures in everyone's eyes, and the full moon banquet had to be held. Otherwise, housekeeper Lin would keep talking about this matter. In fact, the day had long passed, and it had been delayed until now because there were too many things to do. Xiao Xiao, on the other hand, had an advantage. Ever since Jiang Ruan returned, he accompanied her almost every day. Sometimes, Jiang Ruan told him not to worry about her, but Xiao Xiao still stayed by her side. Probably because of what had happened before, Jiang Ruan did not say anything more. "Children," Jiang Ruan reminded him. "We can only try again." The auntie sighed, turned around, and went to help. The guests arrived one after another, and the 100 Days banquet proceeded smoothly. Xiao Mingsheng and Xiao Nanshu's appearances were too good. Although Xiao Mingsheng was cold, it did not affect the fondness of the madams present for him in the slightest. In particular, many young madams thought that it would be great if Xiao Mingsheng could become their son-in-law in the future. Immediately after, a man dressed in purple walked out from behind the valiant man. This man was also very handsome, and his voice was very gentle and polite. "Miss, we are not bad people. May I ask if Miss is from Qingping village, can you lead the way for us?" "Wan, hold on, you and the child are both fine. I'm here, nothing will happen. Don't be afraid, don't give up." Xiao Xiao held her hand. The eyes of the young man, who never showed his emotions, actually reddened. His voice trembled slightly, but his tone was full of determination. "Wan, hold on." He turned to look at the stunned madams, and for the first time, the arrogant young man pleaded, "Save her life." Lu Mengmeng took a step back. This group of people were dressed in extravagant clothes, and each of them looked extraordinary. Lu Mengmeng was, after all, a young girl, and these people were gentle, polite, and good-looking. Unconsciously, she had a good impression of them. But thinking that outsiders rarely came to her village, she still asked, "What do you want?" Therefore, he was not reconciled. He did not leave anything behind, but what if he could keep Jiang Ruan? That woman originally belonged to him. When they grow up, they can choose. Take her away. Xiao Xiao's expression turned cold, and he turned to pull Jiang Ruan's hand, whispering, "Be careful of your body." Xianli somewhat blankly shifted his gaze to Jiang Ruan, and he murmured, "Ruan, What did you say?" Jiang Ruan was startled, took 2 steps forward, and asked sternly, "Speak clearly." She knew that even if she helped Xianli achieve great things, the first thing Xianli would do was burn the bridge after crossing the river. But Qi Man still did it. She watched Xiao Xiao fall in love with Jiang Ruan, and she sneered in her heart. She could see clearly that Jiang Ruan was even more cold-blooded than she was. Jiang Ruan could be so courteous to her biological father, and this woman's heart no longer had any feelings for him. She had wanted to see Xiao Xiao's tragedy and joke, but Xiao Xiao had actually succeeded. Jiang Ruan had actually married Xiao Xiao. Their affectionate appearance had deeply pierced Qi Man's heart. Because of this, she had even hastened the pace of her revenge, which had exposed even more loopholes in her originally flawed plan. If Jiang Ruan's child were to die, she would also live on like a walking corpse. Xianli suddenly thought, in his dream, Jiang Ruan had nothing left. This time, was he going to destroy her again? "Mother, it's not good," Lu Mengmeng panted. "When I entered the mountains today, I met Wan Nyangzi's husband. They brought a lot of people, and they probably came to capture Wan Nyangzi. I was afraid that if they knew about this place, they would carelessly deceive them and leave. I was afraid that they would follow, so I deliberately took a detour and only returned now." Big Mountain stopped Xiao Xiao and said angrily, "Don't you think of hurting her. If you hurt her, I will take your life." Lu Mengmeng snorted in her heart, thinking that Jiang Ruan had clearly said earlier that there was no eldest brother in their family. This was clearly a lie. These people looked like dogs, but she did not expect that they would be so ruthless. At this time, she could not care about the grudges between her and Jiang Ruan. She blinked her eyes and said, "Sorry, I also sympathize with you, but I really don't know where Qingping village is. Brothers, why don't you go look for it again? Goodbye." Naturally, Qi Man would not lose her mind for no reason. Since she could sneak in today, she was certainly not a person who was easy to deal with. However, Xia Qing became more energetic and said, "I did not see wrongly, she did indeed take a poisonous insect. This is a mother-child poisonous insect." She took the mother-child poisonous insect, and the knife just now. He suddenly looked at Xianli on the ground. "Fortunately. What does it have to do with me?" "Indeed, what does it have to do with her?" Xianli himself did not know why he did this. His body became very heavy. He thought that at the end of that dream, he had indeed discovered that he had loved a woman. However, the woman in front of him had cold and elegant features, and was definitely not the same person. Accustomed to this father and son pair coming every few days, Jiang Yuan shrugged and said, "Let's go out and take a look first, in a while, everyone will be here." Time passed in the anxious waiting of the villagers. Until the afternoon of the second day, they did not encounter any major problems. The villagers all went their separate ways. He suddenly hesitated, but Qi Man had already made her move. At that moment, Xianli did not think anything and went up to meet her. He also did not know why he did this, and when he fell, his eyes were even somewhat vacant. The heart-devouring insect has begun to bite back. Xia Qing said, "But what exactly did she suffer? Why did she suddenly seem to be agitated?" "I have," Jiang Yuan said calmly. Jiang Yuan calmly replied, "I've had a time when I was struggling to survive in the dark. I've had a time when I was betrayed. I've had a time when I couldn't trust anyone. I've had a time when I couldn't find a way forward. As for your so-called betrayal, I can only say that the trust one once entrusted to him for a lifetime, in the end, made me pay a painful price. Thanks to him, I have the me that you see now. What I have gained now is the same as what I lost at that time. None of this can be a reason." Jiang Yuan said indifferently, "If you want to have as much as I have now, in this life, you will probably have to pay a painful price." The owner of the pawn shop where Jiang Yuan's jewelry was spread recalled that on that day, a youth dressed as a hunter from the mountains came to pawn something, and it was a living pawn. It could only be said that the owner of the jewelry was still alive. Perhaps this youth wanted to redeem the owner of the jewelry in the future, or perhaps this was a signal that the owner of the jewelry had tacitly approved or even actively released. Xiao Xiao and Jiang Xinji looked at each other and said, "Okay." Big Mountain stopped Xiao Shan's actions. He looked around and confirmed that the person in black was Jiang Ruan's husband. This person looked dignified, but who knew that he was a beast in human form? He said stiffly, "We don't have any foreign here, we are all people from our own village. I'm afraid that young master has found the wrong place." This 100 days banquet lasted until the evening. Jining Wang Fu was bustling with traffic, and it had not been so lively in a long time. Everyone saw Xiao Xiao's thoughtfulness towards Jiang Yuan, and they were all very envious. However, just as Jiang Yuan and Xiao Xiao stood at the door to see off the guests, they heard the wet nurse, who was carrying the child, scream. Everyone was startled, but before they could speak, they saw Xiao Xiao's figure flash. Jiang Yuan was startled, and immediately ran back like a madman. He escaped. "Young master, should we chase after him now?" Genie said. Jiang Yuan glared at Xiao Xiao. Xiao Xiao carried the child in front of Jiang Yuan, and Jiang Yuan stretched out her hand to play with the child. Her heart was full of joy. The pain of that night was completely relieved at this moment, as if everything had been worth it. Life was so wonderful, and this was her and Xiao Xiao's child. She said, "I haven't named them yet, and I've been waiting for you to come." Seeing that Xiao Xiao did not answer, Jiang Yuan looked up and saw Xiao Xiao looking deeply at her. Everyone did not know what had happened, but Jiang Yuan was well aware of it. Today, Qi Man had come here with the mindset that she would die. Who knew that at the most critical moment, Xianli would spoil her plans? Seeing that she would lose her life without gaining anything, based on Qi Man's unyielding temperament, how could she accept this? In addition, seeing Nan Su in Xiao Xiao's arms, she was afraid that the place in her heart that she hated the most had been touched. Lu Mengmeng was a good girl, but she was very clear about her own son's thoughts. Dashan clearly liked Jiang Yuan. Indeed, how could anyone not like a girl like Jiang Yuan? Even she wished that Jiang Yuan could be her own daughter. If Dashan liked Jiang Yuan, if he wanted to marry Jiang Yuan, Gue Sa would not have any objections. However, she was also a woman, and could clearly see that Jiang Wan had no feelings for Dashan, let alone anything else. Dashan's tender feelings were destined to be wasted, but Gue Sa changed her mind. Jiang Wan had suffered so much before, so naturally, because of this, she would not easily trust men. Time revealed a person's heart. Perhaps after a long time, Jiang Wan would change her mind. In short, she would take one step at a time. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. In these 3 months, the rebels in the capital had gradually been pacified. The remaining scattered people of the southern frontier and Xianli were like an arrow at the end of its flight, but they were only pretending to struggle. However, Qi Man and Xianli still did not show up. In a few days, follow me to Jiangnan. Xiao Xiao said, His Majesty will send someone to patrol. Although it was called patrol, it was actually a sightseeing trip. Since Xian Pei had specially arranged it, Xiao Xiao naturally accepted it without hesitation. Jiang Ruan's eyes suddenly widened. What did these words mean? She looked at Xianli, and an unbelievable thought emerged in her mind. At the end of that dream, his great undertaking had been accomplished, but he still felt lonely from time to time. Whenever he thought of that gentle and beautiful figure of the past, he would feel an indescribable pain in his heart. What do you want to do? Jean Eyre slapped him to the ground. He was already very displeased with this youth. Why did he have to act like he was very familiar with the young madam? He had provoked his young master for no reason. He smiled. What does the affairs of a married couple have to do with you? He thought that it was probably not a dream, perhaps it was a sign of something. He understood why in this life, whenever he saw Jiang Wan, he could not help but feel that she belonged to him. Jiang Wan did indeed belong to him, but that was in the past. This time, not only did he wake up from his dream, Jiang Wan also woke up. Thus, she sobered up and threw herself into Xiao Xiao's embrace. She spared no effort to deal with him, viewing him as a mortal enemy. In the end, she obtained an ending that was completely different from the one in the dream. Jiang Wan would never be lenient towards those who wanted to harm her child. Qi Man seemed to gradually wake up again. She looked at Jiang Wan carefully, and after a long while, she understood. She said, It's you, Jiang Wan. I know you. At that time in the minister's fu, it was thanks to me that your mother died so easily in the end. I never understood why things would turn out like this. This should not have happened. Why did it have to be Xian Pei? Later, I understood that you were the variable. Xianli said. Other people might not understand these words, but Jiang Wan knew what he was talking about. He was talking about rebirth, he was talking about the events of his previous life. He knew. But this last wish also fell through. What Qi Man did not expect was that in the end, the one who blocked that knife was actually Xianli. It was this Xianli who had always shared the same hatred with her, and now had lost everything because of Jining Wangfu. Why would such a person save Jiang Ruan's children? Qi Man could not understand, and she no longer wanted to understand. There was no antidote for this Gu. She knew that unless she died, she would have to endure this kind of heart-piercing pain every day. She smiled miserably. She did not understand what she was doing in this life. From the moment she fell in love with Crown Prince Hongxi, this life had started to make a mistake. She could not turn back. She knew that she was wrong, but there was no other way. She could not turn back. Jiang Ruan's heart turned cold. At first, she felt that the poison was so silent that even if Xia Yan's hands and eyes reached the heavens, it would still be somewhat strange. Now, she seemed to understand. She calmed down and asked, Why did you do this? The person standing there was tall, handsome, and dressed in black. If it was not Jiang Ruan's husband as described by Lu Mengmeng, who else could it be? Behind him were a few people whom she had never seen before. The villagers of Qingping village all stood up. Everyone was clear about Jiang Ruan's background, and they hated this heartless ingrate in front of them. Big Mountain blocked in front of the black-clothed man and said, "What do you want to do?" Xiao Xiao looked at him coldly. He was probably extremely unhappy at the moment. He actually reached out and grabbed Big Mountain's arm. The next moment, Big Mountain flew out before his eyes. No one refuted Xiao Xiao's words and acted accordingly. Why? Today, she had infiltrated this place in order to kill these two bastards. These were Xiao Xiao's sons, which meant they were Xiang Xiaoyuan's grandchildren. She hated that it was already impossible for the southern border to seize the great Jin dynasty. As long as she killed these two bastards, she would not have come in vain. It had not been easy for her to stake all her chips. She had paid a great price to infiltrate here, but it had all been ruined by Xianli. Why did he suddenly rush out at the last moment to block a knife for that bastard? Why? Xianli was also affected by Qi Man's poisonous smoke, and his whole body seemed to be in unbearable pain. Qi Feng looked at Xianli curiously and said, "Is this the real Xianli? Why did he suddenly become a good person? There can't be any conspiracy, right?" Xianli saving the two children was an inexplicable matter after all. Xianli was not a kind-hearted person, let alone the children of his enemy. When Gue heard this, she became anxious. What should we do? It was not the first time she had seen someone give birth. Seeing Jiang Wan like this, she knew that the odds were against her. But Jiang Wan had accompanied her for so long. These days, because of Jiang Wan, it was like having another daughter. Gui's heart ached that Jiang Wan had suffered so much at such a young age. If something happened today, she did not dare to think. Xiao Xiao had already heard her voice and instantly broke through the door. The surrounding villagers could not stop him. Big Mountain saw this and wanted to get up to grab Xiao Xiao. "What do you want to do?" Jiang Wan looked down at Xianli. Xianli was half lying on the ground, looking very embarrassed. The knife had hit him in the heart. Jiang Ruan's gaze was suspicious, vigilant, puzzled, but there was no trace of affection. It was a kind of resolute and puzzled gaze looking at a mortal enemy. Xianli smiled bitterly. Why? He could say why. He spat out a mouthful of blood and said, "So, you really hate me." Lu Mengmeng was very angry. She did not expect Jiang Wan to lie to her. She also did not expect that such a good-looking man was not a bad person and was so good to Jiang Wan. But when she looked at Big Mountain who had recently lost his soul, she was relieved. Jiang Wan had such a good-looking and considerate husband, she thought that Jiang Wan would not like Big Mountain. Jiang Wan was not in the mood to eat, but when she heard Gue Sa's last sentence, she could not help but be shocked. Thinking that no matter what, she could not let the children starve, so she endured the discomfort and ate all the food that Gue Sa brought. But even so, the pain in her stomach did not ease at all. In the end, the night passed in a flash. What do you mean? Hey, third brother, you can't be so stingy. She is also my goddaughter. Qi Feng said angrily. Even if I die, I will find her. Xiao Xiao said, let's split up and search. Jiang Xing also followed him out. As long as Jiang Wan was safe, he was relieved. Although he also wanted to go in to see Jiang Wan and his two little nephews, Jiang Ruan's body was weak now, and he was afraid that she needed Xiao Xiao to accompany her. Moreover, these days, he had seen with his own eyes how Xiao Xiao tortured himself. With a sigh, Jiang Xing turned around, closed the door, and walked out. The blue veins on Xiao Xiao's forehead throbbed. Xia Qing and Qi Feng were dumbfounded. Was this Xianli tired of living? How could he confess his feelings to Jiang Wan in front of Xiao Xiao? But was Xianli such a sentimental person? Along the way, the genie guards inquired about the news, and finally, through a lot of insider information, they found out that there was a place to hide from the world. This place was indeed very difficult to find. At that time, everyone had thought that Jiang Wan was no longer in this world. Only Xiao Xiao had persisted in inquiring about Jiang Ruan's news. Now that there was a little bit of hope, how could he give up? Hate him. Hate that he had treated her like that in his previous life, used her to hurt her, and finally caused her to die a violent death. Xianli finally understood why for so long, he had always felt that Jiang Ruan seemed to have a deep hatred for him. It turned out that it was not an illusion. A defeated army was like a landslide. He abandoned his original bright and beautiful life as a prince and hid here and there, bearing the infamy. Until he fell asleep, it was as if he had dreamed of 10 years of spring and autumn. When he suddenly woke up, the world had changed. Lu Mengmeng was picking herbs in the mountains. It was very unsafe for a person to come out to pick herbs alone, but today, she was angry. Last night, Dashan had lost all her face. She had liked Dashan for a long time. He was handsome and brave, and his archery skills were outstanding. However, Dashan had always been indifferent to her. However, Lu Mengmeng was not worried at all. She was the prettiest girl in the village, and also the most knowledgeable. Dashan would definitely like her. Who knew that ever since Jiang Ruan came, everything had changed? Xiang Xiaoyuan had been the crown prince's consort, but Qi Man had wholeheartedly wanted to marry into the Eastern Palace. However, Xiang Xiaoyuan had an excellent reputation among the common people. She had even personally told Crown Prince Hongxi in front of Qi Man that in this world, she only knew that in this lifetime, she only knew one person, no concubines, and that this was life. It was probably at that moment that the hatred for the legal wife was deeply engraved in the bottom of Qi Man's heart. After so many years, she had never forgotten. Yi Feng said, they suddenly appeared and acted too quickly. Qi Man wanted to kill the child, and Xianli blocked a knife. When Yi Feng said this, he felt very puzzled. Everyone knew that Xianli and Jinying Wangfu were mortal enemies. Why would he block a knife for the child? This was something that no one could understand. Jiang Xing and Zhao Jin's marriage was also in full swing, but Xia Qing and Lin Zixiang's marriage wasn't going as smoothly. Lin Zixiang wasn't that satisfied with Xia Qing, and Xia Qing still had a long way to go in her pursuit of a wife. Lu Zhu and Lian Xiao's marriage was also in preparation. In short, the Fu was full of joy. However, the happiest things were probably still the two little fellows. However, Lu Mengmeng suddenly thought that since these people were so cruel, they would definitely not give up until they found Jiang Ruan. Since they had already obtained a clue, they would certainly not give up so easily. It was better to return to the village early and tell the villagers about this matter so that Jiang Ruan could be prepared. It would be best if she could hide and not be discovered. Lu Mengmeng turned her head again to confirm that no one was following her. Then, she carried the basket and hurriedly ran in the direction of the village. It would take several hours to get back to the village from this mountain, it would take quite a while. Lu Mengmeng tried her best to run faster, fearing that she would fall behind the group of evil people. She did not know that Xiao Xiao and the others were following her from afar. Xiao Mingsheng and Xiao Nanqiu grew up very quickly and were very cute. Xiao Mingsheng was usually as cold as his biological father. Apart from Jiang Ruan, he would always keep a straight face when he teased anyone. Housekeeper Lin said that his temperament was exactly the same as Xiao Xiao's when he was young. As for Nanqiu, he was always smiling, but he was secretly the master of mischief. These two treasures caused chaos in Jinying Wangfu all day long, causing people to not know whether to laugh or cry. Jiang Ruan was also busy, and in a flash, it was the beginning of spring. Today, she also came with Auntie Lu. Lu Mengmeng immediately saw the two brothers of Deshan sitting at the door of Gui Sa's house with nervous expressions. When Deshan saw that Jiang Ruan was about to give birth today, he was also scared stiff. Seeing that Jiang Ruan was in so much pain, his heart was also very uncomfortable. At first, he thought that the child would be born that night, but in the end, it did not. Deshan's heart was hanging in his stomach. He did not know what to do, so he could only sit at the door with those young men who adored Jiang Ruan and stare. Seeing her give birth, the moment she stepped into the gates of hell, he did not want to experience it again in this life. That kind of helplessness was mixed with great fear, knowing that the person he loved was suffering, but he did not know what to do. So what if it was a child? As long as Jiang Ruan was alive, he did not want her to suffer like this again. Guisa sighed. She remembered that when the child was born, the young man did not even look at the child. His gaze only fell on Jiang Ruan. That nervous look made people's hearts ache. At that time, she knew that the relationship between this young man and Jiang Ruan was not shallow. She was afraid that things were not as Jiang Ruan said. If this person was Jiang Ruan's husband, he must be someone who loved his wife dearly. Jean Eyre patted de Shan's shoulder and said, "Brother, let's go out first. Our young madam and young master have not seen each other for a long time. They can leave this room to themselves." In just a few short sentences, everyone understood that Qi Man wanted to plant the child venom in the children. Qi Feng asked, "What kind of venom is that?" Nanshu's temper was really good, she happily snuggled into Qi Feng's arms. She was very cute, her skin was white, and her eyes were as dark as Xiao Xiao's, but she was more likable than Ming Sheng. Whenever she saw someone, she would smile. At this moment, she hugged Qi Feng's neck and was about to kiss him. Qi Feng was smiling as he waited, but Xiao Xiao snatched the child away, glanced at him and walked away. Xiao Xiao hesitantly looked at the two wrinkled little monkeys in the swaddling clothes. He buried his head in Jiang Ruan's shoulder and took a deep breath, as if he wanted to engrave her scent in his heart. He said, "Ruan, in the future, don't give birth." Xiao Xiao protected the children very well. All the bodyguards stood by Qi Man's side. Qi Man stared at Xian Li in disbelief and asked, "Why?" Immediately after, Qi Man's voice suddenly rose, almost to the point that everyone's ears could not bear it. She said, "Why? Why? Why?" Jiang Ruan smiled slightly and tilted her head to look at him. There was a bit of naive beauty in her eyes, but there was a coldness in the depths of her eyes. The words that came out of her mouth were even more cruel and ruthless. She said, "What does it have to do with me?" Wang Matron and Gue Sa were first startled by the person who had barged in. They were scared out of their wits. Looking at him, this person should be Jiang Ruan's husband. However, Jiang Ruan's husband was a very heartless person. This young man did not seem to be heartless towards Jiang Ruan. They were all experienced people. The way this young man looked at Jiang Ruan was as if his heart was aching for her. As for Jiang Ruan, although she had been in Qingping village for so long, she always had a slight smile on her face. However, this was the first time they saw Jiang Ruan like this. It was as if all the burdens that she had been silently carrying had all been put down, and she wholeheartedly trusted the person in front of her. What a vicious woman. Steward Lin said angrily, "She really is the same as back then." Jiang Ruan also welcomed them with a smile. Ever since she had given birth, her whole person seemed to have become more gentle. Perhaps because she was more happy, those sharp edges had been smoothed out. Ruan. Jiang Xianji's heart relaxed and he hurriedly walked into the room. Immediately after, he saw Gue Sa come out and instruct a few young wives to boil some sweet water. Jiang Ruan had given birth for a whole night. They probably thought that it was extremely dangerous, but in the end, she had escaped from death. This made everyone's hearts tighten. If not for that black-clothed young man at the end, they were afraid that she would not have been able to persevere. After Jiang Ruan woke up, she felt very sorry for causing everyone to be so busy. Gue Sa comforted her with a few words and said, "Giving birth is important, how can it be a busy day? You've also worked hard. However, the child in this womb is quite mischievous, playing with mother like this. It's probably a boy." Jiang Wan smiled slightly. This is nothing, it's very good here. But why do I feel that you don't seem to like these two children? Jiang Ruan's heart was also a little nervous. Ever since Xiao Xiao came in, his expression towards the child had been indifferent. Why did he show such an expression? Was it because he did not like children? The few women in the room screamed when they saw the people who had suddenly barged in. Jiang Wan opened her eyes in a daze. When she saw Xiao Xiao, tears immediately flowed down her face. She said, Xiao, Xiao, you're finally here. Xiao Xiao carried Nan Su and Jiang Wan out. When they reached the hall, there was indeed an impatient person already waiting for them. The 100 Days banquet of the little heir and little miss of Jining Wang Fu would naturally cause a sensation in the entire capital. Everyone knew that the current emperor had a good relationship with Jiang Wan. Pleasing these two treasures was the same as pleasing the emperor. The endless stream of gifts would be sent to Jining Wang Fu. Housekeeper Lin raised his chin and was also very worried about which woodshed to pile these extra gifts in. That night, Jiang Wan was in pain until the latter half of the night. Because she was too tired, she fell asleep. The elders and villagers of Qingping village, aunts and daughters-in-law with some childbearing experience, were all standing guard at the door of Gui Sa's house. There were also many young men. Jiang Wan was born beautiful, so most of these young men adored her. Usually, they would give her some small gifts, but at this moment, they could not help but worry for her. Disregarding their own parents' scolding, they ran out and stood guard at the door of Gui Sa's house. Jiang Wan stared at Xianli without saying a word. On the other side, when Qi Man's plan failed, she wanted to rush forward again. However, her expression became somewhat anxious. Xia Qing, who had rushed over after hearing the news, was extremely shocked when she saw Qi Man's somewhat deranged appearance. She said, "Why does she look so abnormal? It's as if she has lost her mind." "Of course I hate you." Jiang Wan said, "Even if you have saved my child now, I will still hate you." There was not a trace of ease in her beautiful eyes. Xianli suddenly remembered. Yes, in his dreams, Jiang Wan had never looked at him with such cold eyes. She had always smiled and spoke to him gently. She had always unconditionally obeyed his ideas. Lu Mengmeng was startled and quickly turned around. A handsome young man stood in front of her. This man was dressed luxuriously, and he had a kind of valiant aura about him. He looked at her and smiled. "Miss, may I ask how to get to Qingping village?" "I think it will be in these 2 days. Her stomach is very big." Gui Sa was somewhat worried. After these days of interaction, she had also fallen in love with Jiang Wan. Jiang Wan had a gentle temperament, treated people politely and attentively, and was also born beautiful. There were not as many rules as in the outside world. The people here were also very simple and honest. Gui Sa also treated Jiang Wan as her own daughter and sincerely loved her. At this moment, she could not help but worry for her. Such a big stomach, I wonder if it will be good to give birth. In a place of seclusion, where can we find bait? Qi Feng said, "Perhaps it is someone from the village, should we go and ask?" This time, she only wanted to do her best. In the end, what she could do was nothing more than to kill Jiang Ruan's 2 children. There was not a woman who did not love her own children. At that time, Xiang Xiaoyuan and Crown Prince Hong Shi had the determination to die. Even so, they stayed behind to protect Xiao Xiao. If the children were to die, Xiao Xiao and Jiang Wan would live in pain for the rest of their lives. The name Xiang Xiaoyuan was not unfamiliar to everyone, but only a few people knew about Xiao Xiao's background. Qi Man calling Xiang Xiaoyuan to Nanxiu was still a little strange. Xiao Xiao's expression turned cold, but Qi Man did not care and continued to say, "I will not let you do as you wish. No matter how you win his favor, I said that one day, I will take him away from your side. Now, he is dead. Why are you still alive?" Naturally, these words were meant to scold Jiang Ruan's cruel and unscrupulous husband. All the women present hated such a heartless man, and the young men present also wished that they could give that heartless man a good beating. How could he bear to hurt such a kind and beautiful young lady? That girl's appearance showed that it was not her first time entering the mountains. Moreover, the clues from the brocade guards were absolutely not wrong. There was only one Qingping village here. Where could there be another Qingping village? The way that the girl looked at him just now was extremely strange. At first, it seemed that she was infatuated with him, but after hearing his words, it became a little strange. Then, her attitude suddenly changed. Although he did not know why, Xiao Xiao knew that his words must have caused that girl to have some kind of reaction. Since this was the case, instead of being entangled here, it was better to quietly follow behind and find Jiang Ruan. After all, the girl was inexperienced. If she knew something, she would definitely return to the village to inform them. As long as he followed her, he would definitely find Qingping village. Heart-devouring insect. Xia Qing said, if she succeeds, she must be kept alive. Otherwise, if she dies, the person who planted the insect will also die. Moreover, this insect is very poisonous. The person who has been planted with it will be in great pain, and the only way is to prepare the antidote. Once controlled, wouldn't Ming Sheng and Nan Su fall into Qi Man's hands? Why are you looking at me? Jiang Ruan asked. This may be very strange, but on second thought, there was nothing strange about it. Although Xian Li's troops were many, they were scattered too far away from the capital. Moreover, Xian Pei's troops did not only focus on military power. In many aspects, such as the merchants, he could also rope in some of them. Therefore, while Xian Li's troops were still under pressure from the lack of provisions for their troops and horses, Xian Pei easily solved the problem of the army's provisions. 3 days later, the missing former princess of Nanjiang Kingdom, Qi Man, was found. She was actually standing on top of the city gate, wearing a wedding dress. Because of the heart-devouring insect, her appearance was extremely haggard, and even looked somewhat frightening. However, under such circumstances, she still acted like a young girl, which made people feel strange and shudder. There are too many infatuated people in this world. Even if they are punished, it is also destined by heaven. You cannot represent heaven's will. Jiang Ruan said coldly. Qi Man was also the murderer who killed her mother, the murderer who killed Xiao Xiao's father and mother, and even tried to harm her own child. Such a person, no matter how miserable or pitiful, was not worthy of sympathy. She sneered, the corners of her eyes and the tips of her brows filled with ridicule. Moreover, you should know that Crown Prince Hongxi has never loved you. Your so-called self-reproach is your own one-sided wishful thinking. Why must you make yourself so unbearably miserable? Ruan, Xiao Xiao held her hand, indicating that she should not be agitated. Qi Man's laughing voice sounded, I see that your mother is also an infatuated woman, and it is also pitiful for her to be with someone like Jiang Quan. However, in this life, what I cannot bear to see the most is other people's infatuation, so when Xia Yan and your Fu wanted to get rid of her, I gave her a medicine. Originally, that medicine could have killed you, but who knew that in the end, you would be able to escape a calamity. It is also your good luck, otherwise, how could you still be here today? However, you also have to thank me. If it were not for my medicine, Xia Yan's method of killing your mother would have been 10,000 times more brutal. How can she not be weak? A young wife said, she has suffered so much in the past, and even when she was pregnant, she was still chased by her own husband. I am afraid that her body has long been weak. Ai, so pitiful. Sure enough, this time Deshawn also did not pay attention. He only took the paper-wrapped camellia cake and smiled, it's all right, I am not hungry. Xiao Shan, you also have not eaten for half the night, eat something. Xiao Shan was really hungry. He casually took out the camellia cake, and took a big bite. He even said to Lu Mengmeng, "It's really delicious, thank you." Xiao Xiao tightened his grip on Jiang Ruan's hand. He knew what she meant. Qi Man did not understand. She suddenly laughed bitterly and covered her chest, where the goo bug had already begun to move. At the same time, Xianli, who was lying on the ground, also showed a pained expression. Jiang Ruan also laughed. Qi Man stood on the city wall, her smile wantonly, but no one knew what she was laughing about. Finally, she jumped down from the city wall. She had the unyielding appearance of a southern princess, but she had committed too many evil deeds, so the common people had never had a good impression of her. Naturally, they did not have a good word to say about her. At the same time, Xianli, who was locked up in prison, died at the same time because of the mother and child goo bug. Qi Feng wanted to reach out and pull her, but was stopped by Xiao Xiao. Everyone looked at Xiao Xiao in confusion. Xiao Xiao said in a low voice, "She is lying, follow her." On this day, Jiang Ruan was in the room cleaning up the shredded paper that Ming Sheng and Nan Su had torn. Children were still growing, so they also began to learn to grasp things, so there was shredded paper everywhere. Jiang Ruan bent down to clean up, and suddenly, a pair of hands wrapped around her waist. "You want to harm my child, but you have to see whether I agree or not." Jiang Ruan said coldly, "Just for this, even if you die 10,000 times, it will not be enough." The day passed very quickly. Originally, everyone thought that it was a false alarm, but they did not expect that in the evening, when the sky was close to dusk, Jiang Ruan would start to feel unbearable abdominal pain again, and this time, it was much more severe than the previous time. When Gui Sa entered the room, she saw that the blanket under Jiang Ruan was wet and jumped in fright. She hurriedly rushed to Deshan, who was burning firewood outside, and said, "Deshan, quickly call Wang Matron over. Ruan Nyangzi is about to give birth." You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.